Welcome, everyone. I'm calling the November 17th City Council meeting to order. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a little agenda addition, last minute addition. I'm going to turn this over to City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz, who would like to introduce the Executive Director of the City of Issaquah 4th of July Commission to the Council and to the public this evening. Wally.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. Good evening. Janie, could you come up? As you all know, Mayor Pauley this year appointed a special commission to coordinate the city's celebration of America's 250th birthday next 4th of July. And we've been fortunate to find an individual that has volunteered to be the executive director of the commission to lead the city's efforts in our celebration, and that's Janie Bube. Janie has a day job, and her day job is program manager for the Pacific Bonsai Museum in Seattle, where she directs community events with them, manages their volunteer program, and develops educational programs at the museum. Prior to that, she worked for the Center on Contemporary Art, and then while she was a graduate student, this shows the little bit of connection she has to cities, she started a company that designed in-pavement lighted crosswalks and came up with some new technologies to put toward that. So she has that city connection to her. She has a bachelor's degree from Seattle University and 2 master's degrees from the University of Washington, one in communications and one in landscape architecture. So, Janie, we're really pleased to have you join the team and help us with our celebration of America's 250th birthday next year. Do you want to say a few words?
And I'm going to get you to press the button on the microphone pad. When you see the red light, you're good to go. Unless it's a bad microphone, which we'll find out in about 10 seconds.
Oh, I have to press it for the red light. Got it.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and very excited to make the 4th of July a community-based, local-focused event and really make the Commission's vision and the community's vision come to life. So thank you for having me.
Very excited. Welcome. And thanks for coming tonight to be introduced to the council. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Administrator. The next item on our agenda this evening is ID 1867, and it's a Small Business Saturday Proclamation, and I'd like to invite Ellen Mole to come over to that microphone with me. This one. Ellen is the Gilman Village Merchants Association, from the Gilman Village Merchants Association, and Ellen is also a member of the Planning Policy Commission.
Oh,
I'm going to read, and then you get to say whatever you want.
oh, goody.
Goody.
Oh,
So Ellen has just been wonderfully adept at making sure I understand the history of this amazing treasure we have in town called Gilman Village. And when we talk about small businesses, I think I lived here 5 days before a neighbor told me, you have to go down and check this area out. And that was back in 1993. It has a storied history. It's been an incubator for small businesses for decades, and we're very proud to have them here and glad to see them thriving. Last Christmas was one of the most exciting things I've seen. I had to park 3 blocks away to get parking. That was shocking. So it's really an honor to be able to talk about Small Business Saturday with such a storied history in our community, the Gilman Village owners. So whereas the Saturday after Thanksgiving every year is recognized as Small Business Saturday, and whereas the City of Issaquah celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and our community, and whereas, according to the United States Small Business Administration, small businesses make up 99.9% of all businesses in the United States, and these small businesses are responsible for 64% of new net jobs created since 1995. And whereas most consumers understand the importance of supporting local small businesses, especially on Small Business Saturday, and report this day encourages them to shop small all year long. And whereas the Issaquah Loyal campaign encourages the Issaquah community to shop local and small and community members can support local merchants by using the Issaquah Loyal Holiday Shopping Guide. And whereas our vision partners, the collaboration of Issaquah's economic development organizations, supports the success of small businesses throughout the year. And so now, therefore, I, Mary Lou Polly, the mayor of the city of Issaquah, do recognize November 29th, 2025 to be Small Business Saturday. And I'd like to give Ellen a chance to address you all.
Well, I wasn't sure I'd have a chance to speak, so I haven't prepared notes. We really appreciate that Issaquah hugs Gilman Village and cares very much about seeing it succeed. A number of you may know we have another generation that's coming in. Our daughter Lena, who is Ruth and Marvin's granddaughter, has started taking the helm. So we hope that we will continue to prosper in Issaquah, and thank you so much for being supportive of small businesses.
Small businesses.
And Issaquah businesses.
And Issaquah
Homegrown Issaquah businesses.
So the last order of business is I'm going to get our city administrator to take a picture so we can tell this story. So right here. Thank you so much, Ellen. The next item on our agenda this evening is audience comments, and members of the public may address the council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first, and if you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, press *3. If you've joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. And if you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. There's also a public hearing tonight. AB 9053 is the 2025-2026 Mid-Biennium Budget Adjustment. Comments on this item should be made during the public hearing that occurs later in the meeting. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak for general audience comments?
Yes.
Well, thanks. So just a few notes. If you're making comments, you're invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Please direct comments to the whole council and not individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When you are recognized, if you're a virtual attendee, please unmute your microphone. If you're in the room with us, please step up to the lectern in the center, and there is a button on the base of it that you can turn the microphone on till you see the red light. Please state your name and address or relationship to the city, and speak clearly and pause frequently. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you are attending virtually and you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed, and you are encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes comments seriously. We thank you all for taking time to address us this evening. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person who signed up to speak?
Yes, Kevin Nichols.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Nichols, and I live at 352 Wilderness Peak Drive Northwest in Issaquah. I'm here tonight to comment on Agenda Bill 9017. This is the Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 Crossing Study Update. I want to express my concern about the path that we're taking with this. Not because I oppose connectivity across I-90, but because I'm worried we are on track to miss a once-in-a-generation opportunity to get this right. This study repeatedly references integration with future light rail. It is the very first goal stated in the evaluation framework. It's cited throughout the report as a core justification for pursuing this crossing. But when you look at the designs, there is no meaningful analysis of what integration with light rail would look like in practice. Not a single conceptual station layout, not one shared circulation plan showing how people would access light rail, and not even a consideration of pedestrian-first connections into the station footprint. There is nothing showing that this bridge would truly improve transit access rather than simply accommodate the cars driving nearby. If this project really exists to support light rail, that relationship should be visible and obvious. Right now, it's not. And if anything, approving a car bridge before Sound Transit has even begun station design risks making light rail integration harder, not easier. Without intentional coordination now, we could lock in a design that constrains where that station can go or guarantees costly redesigns in the future. My second concern is the lack of any pedestrian and bike-only options in the study. The document mentions light rail repeatedly as a reason to build this, and prior public comment from the community mentions active mobility as a priority. But every design presented is fundamentally a car bridge, with some pedestrian and bike access added on. Further, given the significant financial concerns that have been brought up multiple times in the past regarding this project, we should be at least looking at the most cost-effective options. And yet the most cost-effective, lowest carbon, highest impact way to support a future rail station, prioritizing bike and pedestrian access to transit, appears not to have been considered. A lighter, less expensive, bike and pedestrian bridge will create the exact kind of walkable, transit-oriented environment we say we want. And it would have a much greater probability of actually being able to get funded and built. Right now, you're being asked to accept a design that looks backwards, not forwards. This is a design that reflects the plan and priorities of the 1970s. A highway project, not the 21st century transit-oriented neighborhoods we want to be planning for. We should be able to look at something amazing and imaginative and future-oriented, and instead, we're getting a bridge from the past. I hope the council will pause and ask for alternatives that truly support transit, that prioritize low-cost pedestrian and bike access, and that align with the vision we keep saying we have for Central Issaquah. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, is there anyone else who signed up?
No one else has signed up for general comments. Tom, I believe you signed up under the public hearing. Okay, so no one else has signed up for audience comments. Thank you. That will come a little later.
He's wasn't going to speak on the budget. He has another issue, so I think he actually is for general comments. The public hearing. He would like to speak now.
Okay, wonderful. Come on up.
You can come up now to the microphone. Oh, not even general comments. You found a friend in the audience. Okay. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here to speak this evening? City Clerk, can you look online and verify if we have speakers there?
Yeah, we have a few members of the public with us virtually, but I'm not seeing any of them indicate a desire to speak. Just waiting a minute here. Nothing.
Thank you, City Clerk. So thank you for the comments this evening. We heard about AB 9017, concerns over integration with the overpass with the light rail station. And as a reminder, written comments can be submitted at any time to the City Council at issaquah.gov. So the next item of business we have on the calendar is the consent calendar, and I do not have any more remarks tonight on the calendar, but I do know at least one of our chairs does, or one of our council members. So Councilmember Ray.
Thanks. I want to speak to Agenda Bill 9064 today, which is amendments to the financial policies, travel and procurement card policies. And I understand the desire to modify these our financial policies quickly, but I'm concerned that we are making these changes with really minimal guidance from the council. And historically, changes to financial policies have been made by the council with assistance from the administration. And these updates seem to be kind of upside down to me, with the administration making the changes with guidance from the council. So I urge the council going forward to take ownership of the financial policies. The primary focus of the city council is to manage the city's finances and to make policy for the city. And this is the intersection of the financial policies. So I think I am fine with what's in it, but I am sounding a tale of caution to make sure that you do not give away this very, very important policy going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. Are there any other chairs who would like to make comments on any of the items on the consent calendar? I am not seeing any head nods. The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and if authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have. They have.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? Not seeing any head nods, yes. Can we get a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries 7-0 unanimously. We're going to move into the public hearing, which is AB 9053, the 2025-26 Mid-Biennium Budget Adjustment. And the task this evening is to conduct the public hearing. So the public hearing on the budget adjustment was opened at the October 20th City Council meeting. The City Council continued the public hearing to allow for additional input as they continued to deliberate on October 27th. Tonight, Finance Director Kristen Garcia will provide us an update on changes to the budget adjustment since the October 20th meeting. And after their presentation, I'll reopen the public hearing. After the hearing is closed, Council can then ask questions. Council is being asked to adopt the budget adjustment tonight on the agenda under regular business. So I'm going to turn it over to Finance Director Kristen Garcia to present this item. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Give me a moment. See if I can share my screen. I may need technical assistance. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. You'd think after being up here a couple of times, I'd have this down by now, so appreciate your patience. Okay, well, thank you tonight. So we are continuing our public hearing. So we have a couple purposes of tonight's meeting. The first, I wanted to make sure and address any comments and questions that came out of the last conversation that we had on October 27th. We're also conducting the continuation of the public hearing on the proposed 25 and 26 mid-biennium adjustments. And then after the public hearing, under the new business section of the meeting, Council will be asked to consider adoption of the mid-biennium budget adjustment ordinance. So the next slide is a representation of all the things that I gleaned from the last conversation that we had on October 27th when I presented the mid-biennium adjustments. I have the responses to all the questions and comments kind of weaved throughout the presentation, so I wasn't intending to go over each of these items individually, but I wanted to make sure and capture everything that I heard and wanted to make sure that Council saw that I was listening to the questions and comments and wanted to put it all in one place so you can see what I had gleaned from that conversation, and hopefully I didn't miss anything. So the first item that I want to start with, as tonight is the continuation of the public hearing on the mid-biennium budget adjustments, is I wanted to kind of take a step back and walk through all the proposed amendments, walk through what's being proposed tonight, and then I'm going to point out any changes that have occurred since the last time that we had met on October 27th, and any changes from the start of the public hearing that we had on October 20th. So this is a recap of our previously approved budget adjustments. So what that means is these are items that were brought forward throughout the year to Council on an individual basis. Those have already been approved. We have some general fund adjustments. We have the budget truck, the dispatcher position. We had some money from the Affordable Housing Fund for the Issaquah Housing Investment Plan. We have some utility fund adjustments for the Newport Sewer Relocation Program and Highwood Reservoirs and Retrofit Project. We also had some grant-funded projects, so we need to authorize budget authority for spending on those grant dollars for the Video Analytics Project, the Solar PV System and Storage to Senior Center, and then some money for Gilman Well. We also had some budget corrections. So what that means is the majority of these items we had originally budgeted for the expense to happen in one fund, but the expense is actually occurring in another fund. So we just need to budget the approved authority and put that in a different space. We also had some grants that we reauthorized during a reauthorization process Some of those were duplicated and some of those weren't attached to the right grants when they actually came in. So we just want to move that budget authority to make sure it's aligned with the appropriate funding. We also want to correct some negative fund balances that were budgeted in the original adopted budget. Revenues have come in higher than what we were anticipated, so I just want to make the correction so that the ending fund balance is actually budgeted as positive. And then we also had overestimated expenditures in the insurance fund for 2026. We know what those costs are going to be now, so we just want to realign the budget with what those actual expenses are anticipated to be in 2026. So now on to the new items that are being proposed that council has not yet authorized. On the general fund proposed adjustments, we know that we're anticipating some increased costs into the public defense contracts. As you may recall, council recently adopted a public safety sales tax. That new revenue source doesn't come online until 2026, but we are anticipating some costs to the public defense contracts in 2025. So we want to do a budget amendment to authorize that additional spending if necessary. We also want to close out our ARPA funds. These were monies that were originally budgeted in the capital project funds. That project came in a little bit less than we were anticipating, so we had some ARPA funding that now needs to be reallocated to some other eligible expenses. So what this is doing is just moving that authorized budget from the capital project funds into the general fund so we can close out that spending. So that's not new money, it's just realigning again budget with expenses for eligible categories for the ARPA fund. We're also planning some funding for the electronic monitoring devices. Now that will not be additional money from the general fund. We're anticipating that to be funded by the Administrative Office of the Court. So that will be grant funded for 2025. A new item is the $50,000 for human services funding. That came out of the discussion that we had from October 27th. Administration was directed to include that in the 2025 budget adjustments, so it has been included. And then the removal of the employee leave payouts, this is a change from our previous conversation. So if you recall, we have some known leave payouts that have already been paid out from separation of employment for employees. We had originally included that as a budget adjustment to increase spending for that. But as we're trying to realign our targeted ending fund balance percentage, we're now suggesting that that would be removed as a budget amendment, so we wouldn't be adding to the existing budget, and that would just be absorbed by departments' existing budgets. So we don't want to increase spending for that area. So that's why it's shown as in parentheses, or in accounting world, that's shown as a deduction. So we're proposing to remove that as a budget adjustment. A streets fund adjustment, we had originally proposed in the budget adjustments that you saw earlier that the general fund would transfer $130,000 to the streets fund to pay for some operating needs above and beyond what was originally budgeted. Again, in order to realign our targeted fund balance and try to bring that back up to the 15%, we're suggesting to remove that from the general fund, so the general fund would not transfer that money, and instead the streets fund ending fund balance would absorb that. So that wouldn't impact their current existing operations. The streets fund has adequate fund balance to absorb that cost. And then the capital project fund adjustment, that is for the East Lakes and Mamish Parkway pavement preservation. And there's funding in the capital project fund for that. So in 2026, we had proposed to add 2 additional park positions. One of those positions would be a maintenance position that would be funded by the additional revenue that will be received from the King County levy. The second position is a Parks Recreation Coordinator, which would be paid for anticipated additional revenue from new events that position would be coordinating, and also by an offset of a reduction of a portion of the part-time. The $150,000, that was for the Eco Northwest report implementation, was a question or a comment that came out from our last discussion, so I wanted to clarify that here, that is a separate bulk of work from the housing strategy. So the $150,000 will be, or is proposing to be used for implementation of the Eco Northwest report. The housing strategy wasn't planned for 2026, so the $150,000 wouldn't be used for that. Some additional items, the remaining items are proposing reductions from the original list of proposed amendments for 2026. Again, removing the employee payouts, we are suggesting that departments would absorb that within their existing adopted budgets. Remove or hopefully just delay the Pickering Barn generator and server relocation that was originally included as an ask to increase the budget, but we're suggesting, again, in order to try to bring the targeted fund balance as close to that 15%, removing that from 2026 and delaying it to a future year. And then the 3 additional items are new. Those are items that we haven't discussed before. A one-time reduction of a general fund transfer to the IT cost allocation. The IT fund does have adequate fund balance as a means, again, to get the general fund unfund balance as close to that 15% target as possible. That's one of the suggestions that we're proposing, is to reduce that, again, one time just for 2026. A one-time reduction to the annual operating transfer to the streets fund. Again, that would just be a reduction of fund balance that would not impact anything that's budgeted for 2026 in terms of ongoing operations. That would just be a reduction of fund balance. And then a one-time reduction to the annual transfer for the turf replacement. There's nothing significant planned within the next biennium. So again, that shouldn't have any impact on future replacements that we have planned beyond 2026. Other 2026 proposed adjustments, the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund. So that is new. Council did authorize a new revenue source, the Public Safety Sales Tax. We will start collecting revenue in 2026. And so what we're proposing is that we are going to create a separate fund that the Public Safety Sales Tax revenue will go into. In order to be transparent and accountable for those funds. So what this proposed adjustment means is that those are costs that we're proposing that are currently within the general fund. The public defense, the increase in public defense costs, shifting some of the police department staffing cost and a portion of the existing fleet cost allocation currently funded by the general fund. We would shift those costs into the new public safety sales tax fund, and then that revenue source would then pay for that cost in 2026. Also looking at the transportation benefit district to fund the portion of the MetroFlex contract that would have been funded by the general fund. So we're still intending to pay that. We're just changing the source of money from the general fund to the TBD fund in 2026 to pay for that. Other proposed adjustments, the sewer fund, Highlands and Front Street lift station improvements. We want to increase, we had an increased grant award for the arts programming in the municipal art fund, so we want to make sure that we have budget authority to match the increase in the grant award. And then we need to use some remaining bond proceeds for the strategic small capital projects. So what that means is we still have some bond proceeds that are unallocated. We need to find some eligible expenditures, kind of similar to the ARPA fund, that we have the money, we just need to allocate that to some eligible expenses. So we have planned to do that for 2026. Okay, so what this is representing, this is a side-by-side comparison of the preliminary forecast and the updated forecast. So we had brought forward the preliminary forecast for 25 and 26, which showed that we were projecting an ending fund balance in 2025 at 8% of expenditures and of 7% in 2026. So council had asked administration to come back with some proposed adjustments to try to bring that fund balance target as close to the 15% as possible to meet our policy requirements. And so if we look at the 2025 updated forecast column, this is where I'm itemizing for you the changes from what we had talked about originally and how what we just discussed for the proposed changes will impact the target ending fund balance. So I'll start in the 2025 updated forecast column. If you go down mid-page to the unrestricted expenditures of $67.6 million, you'll see that's the same number that we had in our original forecast. So that number assumed that we would use about 100% of what we had budgeted, plus it included all of the proposed amendments that we had talked about before we made any changes. So then we're going to add the 50,000 for human resources, and then we're reducing the street operating overages of 130,000 because the streets fund's going to absorb that. We're removing the retirement cash outs because the department budgets, the existing budgets are going to pay for that. And then if you go down, you'll see the 500,000 estimated general fund underspend. So that's a new item. What that means is I actually went through line by line in the general fund for each line, one by one, and did kind of an updated forecast from what we had originally done the forecast earlier in the year. Now we have more data because we have the end of October, and so I wanted to go line by line to see if we actually intended to spend 100% of the budget. So there were a couple places that based on where we are in the year, that I don't anticipate that we're going to fully spend. So that's what that number is representing. Historically, we haven't spent 100% of the budget, so that aligns with what I'm seeing with the updated forecast versus what we have historically. So that's what that 500,000 is representing.
Councilmember Jang, did you want to jump in with a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you have any, specific examples of some of the things that are included in that 500,000 that you'd be able to share with us?
Yes, they're kind of all over the place and not one specific department. All departments had some kind of underspends, but some of those were in salary and benefits, some of them were in training, some of them were travel, legal services, professional services, small tools and equipment, repairs and maintenance. So a lot of different categories kind of adding up to that amount. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And so similar, if you go to the far right column, the 2026 updated forecast, similar, reducing the retirement cash outs, the reduction of the Pickering Barn generator, the MetroFlex, we're moving that from the general fund to the TBD fund, shifting the public safety sales tax, or shifting some of those police department expenses to the public safety sales tax fund. Again, assuming that we will likely have some underspend in our expenditures for 2026. That was the 500,000 also included in the 2026. And then you'll see the one-time reductions in the IT fund, streets fund, and the transfer of the turf fund. And then the final item, we also know that the CPI came in lower than what was anticipated for COLAs for non-represented staff. That's what the 117,000 represents, because that will be a known reduction.
Kristen, Council President.
Thank you. Kristen, can you talk about where we stand with the streets fund? I see here they're being asked to absorb 130,000 for street operations overages in 25, and then an additional $250,000 cut in 2026.
Yes, so operationally, it won't impact what was budgeted for 2026, so these would be a reduction of fund balance. This wouldn't be something that we would want to sustain over the long term. If we continue to do one-time cuts to the streets fund, then we would start impacting operations. But again, we're proposing one-time cuts. We've evaluated the ending fund balance. It won't impact what we've planned for operations in 2026. But kind of as a preview to our next biennial budget in 27-28, probably wouldn't want to continue those reductions without having a conversation on how that would impact operations.
So I'm looking at our 2025-2026 adopted budget, and before making these changes, it was listed at only a balance of just over $1 million. So are we saying we're comfortable with that balance going down to, what, 650, 700,000?
That's the adopted budget fund balance. The current budget, or the current fund balance, is about 4 million right now. So we're higher.
Oh, this is the ending fund balance for 2026. So because what we have budgeted to spend in 2026 was already going to take down the fund balance.
Correct.
So, okay, I'm really worried about getting that fund down that low, but I guess we can talk about that.
Keep going. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so now I wanted to follow up on all the additional items that came out of our conversation that we had on October 27th. One of the items was establishing an audit committee. I think I heard a general consensus from the council that that was something that the council wanted to do. So that'll be planned for 2026. So there'll be more information that'll be coming early next year on that. Update on the general fund reserve policy that was included in Agenda Bill 9064, which was included in the consent agenda, but just wanted to confirm with council that we did do clarification on how the general fund, any fund reserve is calculated, and we also determined a formal measurement date within that policy. Those changes were captured in what was approved tonight in the consent agenda. Also wanted to note that there was a request for more information on the public safety sales tax. So there is Exhibit B, I think it's about 2 pages, that summarize kind of our previous conversations that we've had on the previous, on the public safety sales tax in terms of how it was authorized, what's the eligibility criteria, what can it be used for, those kinds of things. So there is more detail in the packet under Exhibit F, but I just wanted to reiterate here that the mid-biennium adjustments do include some planned uses of funding in terms of public defense, existing officer salaries, and a portion of the fleet contribution. We also have within that document in the exhibit some additional planned uses that haven't been clearly identified yet, but like to suggest some ideas for using it for capital facilities and equipment. Another item that was requested for more information, and I do believe Director Monahan will be coming forward to council early next year that will give you a more comprehensive update, but I just wanted to give you some big picture items just to follow up to let you know that I did hear the request for more information. So back in 2023, there was a fleet study that compared the fleet's performance to a series of industry norms or best practices. The study found that almost 50% of the city's motorized fleets were found to be older than the recommended life cycle. So what we did in the 2025 and 2026 budget is we did make an investment to replace some of those older vehicles. Some of them had aged even more since the 2023 study was adopted. So we did make some investments in this biennial budget. Other work that we've done so far, other than the capital purchasing, we've made some EV investments, customer service improvements, upgrades to software, and an additional full-time mechanic position. We still have some work to do to fully implement what we learned from the study. We do need to fill the fleet manager position that was recently vacated. We also want to create a multi-year replacement plan. So what that means is we want to be a little bit more strategic long-term and try to level out the replacements and the funding to make cash flow a little bit easier on the general fund instead of having big spikes on the replacements. We also want to have 2 separate fleet funds. So we want to have a dedicated fund for the capital investment, and then we want to have a fund to make sure that we're taking care of kind of the ongoing maintenance and operations. So again, this is kind of just a high-level peek of the fleet fund, kind of where we were, where we're at, and Director Monahan will be coming forward early next year to give you more information on that. One of the other items that was requested is some information on the pavement preservation program. There is, I believe, a 2-page summary in Exhibit E in the packet, which goes over some more detailed information, but I just kind of wanted to give you some general highlights of what was in there. And I do believe Director Moon is planning, again, to come before council early next year to give you a more comprehensive update, but I wanted to make sure, and I followed up with you based on our conversation on October 27th. So, oh yes. Yeah.
Just finish the slide and then Council President has a question.
Okay, perfect. So the pavement preservation program is primarily funded by rate in the general fund. We do have a goal of maintaining about 8.1 lane miles per year. Our approximate funding needs to do that ranges from about $2 to $2.5 million per year. We did meet that targeted funding level in 2021 through 2024, but to make sure that we could balance our budget this biennium, that funding was reduced for 25 and 26.
Thank you. Council President?
Yeah, so trying to understand what you had provided in our packet, which showed authorized budget of 1.4 million, 1.47 and 1.4 million in 25, 26. But then we're also proposing cuts to the street operating fund. Is that just balance and it won't affect the
Correct.
operations?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Keep going.
Okay. All right, some more information on the King County Parks Levy. We are expecting an increase to begin in 2026 of our King County levy of about $210,000 per year. So the levy must be used for new expenses, so we can't supplant our existing funds, and we need to use it to maintain, enhance, or expand the park system. So the increase that we're expecting in 2026, this is where we're requesting the additional parks maintenance position. We're anticipating that to be about $150,000 of the $210,000 increase that we're expecting. And then the remaining $60,000 will be used for additional park maintenance expenses related to recent capital improvements. There was also a question about how much did we budget for our Human Services Strategic Plan. The Human Services Strategic Plan was performed in-house, except for about $3,000 that was used for outside consulting, but there wasn't any specific amounts actually included in the budget because we intended to do that work in-house. So that, Mayor, concludes my presentation, and so administration would be recommending that council adopt an ordinance to amend the 25 and 26 biennial budget.
Thank you, Kristen. I tell you frequently that you bring us so much information, but in such an understandable narrative. This is hard for us, so
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent responses. I'm going to reopen the public hearing, and there is a point in time when we have more council questions too, at 7:42. And so if you are joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. But if you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. And City Clerk, have you had any interest in speaking during this public hearing?
Mayor, no one has signed up to speak in advance, and I don't see anyone online indicating a desire to speak.
Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak during the public hearing? I'm not seeing any indication. Is there any objection to closing the public hearing? I am not seeing an objection, so hearing none, the public hearing is closed. And let's move to some council questions. There was a lot of information in there. If you have additional questions, please feel free to raise your mic. Council President?
Thank you. So I'm still trying to understand the street fund and kind of what that ending fund balance would be. And so looking through what you have provided here, it suggests, it suggests adding $300,000 to the fleet fund from the public safety sales tax, but then making cuts to the street operating. So we're proposing in this little bit of an increase to fleet fund and 2 sets of decreases to street operating. Is that correct?
So the fleet fund is separate than the streets fund, so
Yeah, I know. I know, they're about the same number. And so I'm looking at that and trying to understand if with this proposal with the public safety sales tax, we are proposing $300,000 to fleet fund, correct?
No, what we're proposing is the general fund makes transfers into the fleet fund for all the general fund vehicles. A portion of that is for police vehicles. So what we're proposing is the portion that the general fund sends for the police vehicles, and it's a lot more than $300,000. But what we're proposing here is that the public safety sales tax will pay for the police vehicles a portion of what's transferred from the general fund.
Okay.
So that doesn't have anything with the streets fund. That's
No,
separate.
I understand. So the general fund is not sending $300,000 to the fleet fund as a result of this, correct?
Correct. It is not an increase. It's actually trying to free up some of the
Yes.
general fund.
So there's 300,000 in the general fund that has been freed up, and we are still making the recommendation to reduce the street fund by 130,000 for operations overages and 250,000 for a one-time cut. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the reason is because council had directed administration to try to bring the general fund, any fund balance back up to as close to 15%. And so we were trying to find ways without impacting any one department so significantly that it would impact operations. So we were trying to find one-time places to get to that 15%.
Yes, and I very much appreciate that. I just have a different suggestion of how to do that based on where I'm seeing the numbers, but thank you.
Okay.
Additional questions? Councilmember Ray?
Can I dig in a little bit into not so much 2026, but 2027 and 2028? Because I'm seeing a bunch of one-time cost savings, and I'm still seeing that we're not hitting the 15% number. And I'm worried about the short term, but I'm really worried about the long term. And how do I not read one-time reduction transfer of IT funds, one-time reduction transfer of street funds, one-time reduction transfer of turf fund, not as kicking the can down the road?
I think that's a good question because we have a newer council member. I think, too, that this is an exercise in scraping just to get you through the next year and that we have fallen off the fiscal cliff.
Yeah,
And
no,
we don't have
I'm-
enough revenue for expenditures.
Well, yeah, and I know this is question time, but
Yeah.
I fear that we are on a slippery slope and it's not going to get any less slippery. And so when we get to talking about where we're at and what we're going to do, these numbers don't make me go, "Phew, I feel like we've got a plan. I feel like we've got a scrape." So, anyway, but that's a comment, not a question. I try to play by the rules.
Well, Director, if you'd like to add a little bit to an answer into Councilmember Ray's question and his concern?
I think one of the things that we had talked about, I believe at our last meeting, is doing an update to our long-term financial plan. I think that's going to be a key component to understanding. You're correct, the one-time reductions aren't sustainable. But I think we've kind of seen this pattern for the last 5 years, so I think that will be an important exercise for us to go through in doing that long-term financial plan to make sure that we can see how we're going to be, if we're going to be sustainable and what that's going to look like in terms of what new revenue that we're going to need or what we're going to need to do in expenses. So that exercise will come forward, I guess is.
I think it's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how you can not, but it's still, it's kind of hard decision time is a reckoning. So it's getting to be that time where we've got to step up and do something. We can plan and plan and plan, but at some point you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hall? Councilmember Hall?
If I had a question about the Eco Northwest report, is Director Dollywall with us by chance?
She is, I believe.
No Director Dollywall.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll just ask it, and if not, my vote doesn't hinge on this anyways. So we have clarity that the housing strategy work plan is not an element of that 150K.
Yes.
Just looking back at the Eco Northwest report, it looks like, we did the cottage and courtyard housing element of it. We kind of decided the condominium stuff was a little out of our lane and continued to advocate at the state level around that. The other part was inclusionary zoning. And so I just kind of wanted to get a better sense of if we had a sense of what the scope of work for that 150K would it be, maybe we'll just try and get a response over email or something. I'm just curious because there's quite a bit in the inclusionary zoning and then the other items to consider like the structured parking, although I think the state might have just taken care of that for us, and then the development bonus program and things like that. So how broad is the 150K implementation?
Councilmember Hall, members of the council, it's not very broad. Okay. What I'd like to try to do is phone a friend and see if I can get more specific information to that for you in the course of your discussion. Director Dollywell's out of the country,
Okay.
but I'll see if I can't get our planning manager, Kristen Leeson, on the line.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions? I'm not seeing any, so we will return to this item for discussion and action under regular business. The next item, the next category is regular business, and we're going to start with the ID 1938 MetroFlex contract extension. The ask before council tonight is to direct the administration, and I'd like to invite Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder to present this item. Welcome, Andrea. Pat.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Polly, members of City Council, and the rest who may be watching. I'm Andrea Leonard, Deputy City Administrator, and we're here to talk about the...
Apologies. We'll work on the script. Sorry about that, Andrea. I didn't say your name properly.
Oh.
I apologize.
That's fine. I didn't even notice, but thank you. So we are here to talk about the MetroFlex contract. Just as a reminder, MetroFlex is the on-demand transit service that works similar to carpooling. And there we go. The purpose of tonight is to discuss MetroFlex contract options and terms. This is in direct response to the direction we received from council at last week's meeting to come back and discuss the contract. Our discussion of the contract is assuming that council provides funding for this contract as Director Garcia just discussed with the Mid-Biennium update, which is the vote is to occur after this item. So just noting that this presentation pretty much just assumes funding for the contract next year, and that's why we're talking about options, contracting terms and options. So direction needed is to provide any and all feedback that council may have on those contract terms. And just again, as a little bit of a reminder for background, 2024-2025 was the pilot contract for the MetroFlex services in Issaquah. Those services were originally designed to help connect Tallis and Squawk neighborhoods better to the rest of the valley floor and cover a large part of the city, though not all of the city. As you recall, the administration has been discussing our concerns for a few years over the ongoing funding of that contract and how we are going to fund that in a sustainable way. It's about $260,000 annually, and it has been coming out of the general fund, but as you just heard, Finance Director Garcia suggest it to come out of the Transportation Benefit District funds. On October 27th, we heard feedback from council to use those TBD funds to fund the MetroFlex services. And then, as I said last week, we heard from you that you wanted us to bring the contract terms for your discussion here today. Current contract terms are that are being proposed for 26 and 27 are the same as what they were for the pilot years. So 3,700 vehicle operation hours, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And again, it's about $260,000 annually. Some information for you that was emailed to you last week in response to previous council questions on this topic include top pickup and drop-off locations on these maps that you see here. This is data that we've collected from the last quarter of services. So you can see from these maps that first one on the left is pickup and the one on the right is drop-off locations. They are similar but not identical. And you can see the bigger the dot, the more purple the dot, or the darker the dot, the more popular the locations are. And you can see where those pickup and drop-off locations are not, places that do not have dots. So I wanted to provide this information for you for your discussion this evening because we heard in previous council conversations a desire to perhaps explore changing the service coverage area. So as I said, originally we had direction from council to make sure that we were providing a service to better connect the Tallis and Squawk neighborhoods. And we've heard some council feedback suggest, well, what would it take to add the Issaquah Highlands? And so we asked our partners at Metro Transit, what would that take to cover more of the Issaquah Highlands than what the service covers today? And they said in order to keep costs the same at that $260,000 annually, we would need to remove part of the service area. And this is because the vans cover so much area and they want to be sure that the vans arrive within an acceptable time for a rider. If a rider hails a ride and it takes 45 minutes for that van to come pick them up, that's going to affect ridership. They're probably going to opt for their car or some other way of getting around. And so, so Metro modeled out using their software, what would it take to cover the Issaquah Highlands? And they suggested removing the Squawk neighborhood from service due to low utilization historically in that neighborhood. So this map on this slide here depicts outlined in purple would be a new proposed service area that includes most of Issaquah, including a new portion of the Issaquah Highlands. And the orange service area is the current service area, which shows Squawk as being covered, but not Issaquah Highlands. So I wanted to be able to show what that service area would look like if we were to add the Issaquah Highlands without a cost increase to that service. Next steps, pending funding and direction we receive from you today, would be that the administration negotiates contract terms with Metro Transit. The mayor would then sign the contract. It's within spending authority. If council provides the budget for the mayor, then she would sign that contract, not needing to return back to council for approval of the contract. And then that new contract would be in effect by January 1st. In order for those new services to start January 1st, we really need the contract signed by December 31st this year. So again, we seek any and all direction that council may have tonight on those contract terms. The administration has no recommendation for changes at this time.
So I'm thinking for this process that maybe we start with questions and give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, and then we can do a round table and do all the comments and sum it up at the end. So questions. Council President?
Thank you. With the maps, do we know if people can get access to Lake Sammamish State Park? It looks like the very edge of that is right maybe at the entrance point.
Yes. So they would have access via the boat launch area. So they could be dropped off in that area. As you can see from this map, it is at the very edge. So they can be dropped off, I believe, or picked up at the entrance points, and then they would have to make their way into the park. And that's part of the current service area as well.
Yeah. And Councilmember Hall just mentioned the soccer fields. They would be able to be dropped off kind of right there by the soccer fields, right?
Yep. And I'm pulling up the utilization maps so we can see what those rides have looked like over the past quarter. And you see there are some dots in that area of the folks who've been picked up. It looks like they've been picked up in the park or have hailed it from the park.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Councilmember Martz?
Thank you. The nerd in me just has to ask, on the drop-off, obviously the transit center is a popular location. There's a location way up in Tallis. Do we understand why that's so popular?
I believe that's Rosecrest.
In Tallis, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, an affordable housing project. We know that they have really high utilization.
That makes sense.
I apologize, Councilman Martz. In a previous presentation that unfortunately you were not here for, that was one of the top 5 locations.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Additional questions? Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, just to check, we didn't ask about service time or anything like that, right? It was all completely focused on service area. Is that right?
Service time, are you?
Like hours of operation.
Hours of operation. So I don't recall council providing previous
didn't. I'm
feedback
just
on
asking.
that. If you wanted to discuss different hours of operation, then we'd like any feedback that you have. And I'll just pull this up again, the hours of operation, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Does administration remember any feedback we've ever received from Metro, even here at council when we've discussed this with them here, whether they would ever be willing to consider changes to hours, or was that kind of like a set
You can
in
pay
stone
for it.
thing? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
within existing cost.
Yeah, so
Probably not.
I believe that just like the service area, if we want to add something, then we have to take away from some other
It's a give
side.
and a
So
get.
it's really
Okay.
looking at the shifts of drivers, how long the drivers have a shift. And, we don't pay overtime for this kind of regular type of service that would be expensive. So really trying to, the units are like driver shift and vans, number of vans. Those are the units we're playing around with. So, so we would have to, if we want to extend later, we would either need to pay more or we would need to start later as well.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Joe, followed by Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you refresh my memory in terms of the recommendation from TAB if they took a look at this? Transportation Committee? Commission?
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. When we first designed the pilot program and conceived of this program, we looked at all kinds of options, and TAB recommended MetroFlex services for us to pursue. There were other options that we considered: a city-run circulator or shuttle, and a private option as well. This MetroFlex services was by far their favorite of the options that we presented, and we have not taken this back to TAB for this particular conversation of whether or not we should revise the contract.
Thank you. And if council were to decide to pull the plug on Metro, what replaces it?
We have no service that would replace it. So what would replace it is folks would be on their own to figure out how they're connecting to different places. So that would be accessing other transit services. Certain parts of Issaquah are not easily accessible to transit. They would need to drive their own vehicle, walk, bike, carpool, and arrange those things on their own.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Joe, you bring up a good point. Sending it to TAB is also an option. Councilmember Zhang.
I'm just curious about, if we adopt this new service area, do you have a plan for when we would evaluate this new coverage area for performance, especially relative to the criteria that King County Metro uses to determine if they're going to fund MetroFlex, different areas? They have criteria for that.
So your question, Councilmember Zhang, is when would we evaluate this again to see if the service area change was being productive?
Yeah, I think part of the rationale for this change is that, potentially could increase ridership, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm curious if we have a plan of when we would look at that.
We get quarterly performance metrics from Metro Transit, and so we could assess that performance on a quarterly basis. And I would invite feedback from council as to when you would like us to evaluate that.
Yeah, I think I would love to see the data in the first quarter, because I think one of the things that we discussed was potentially, changing this to something else. And so, we'd want to review the data as soon as it's available.
So Councilmember Zhang, keep that thought, because after we're done with questions, you can add that to your list of things that you would like to see staff come back with.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Questions for Andrea? Okay, I am not seeing a lot of additional questions. So if we want to work our way around the room, we can start with Councilmember Zhang, who's already put one request out on the table for consideration, which is quarterly review of the data. But did you have other things on your list?
Yeah, I think, going back to what we talked about previously, I'm still concerned about the cost of the service. $40 per ride is very high. I'm also concerned that, the the whole concept of microtransit is it's essentially an on-demand, you know, concierge service. And so the more you add service area, the more you add rides, the longer the wait time is, I mean, you know, likely the longer the wait time is going to get for the user. So I'd be very curious to see if that, you know, my preconceptions are accurate, given, you know, the actual data. Personally, I would love to see us revisit this idea of a local circulator shuttle. And I know that requires staff time, which, you know, given the budget conversation we just had, we may not have. But that's something that I would definitely love to see us, you know, potentially explore as a future pilot or something like that, given that now we have a good sense of where people are when they're using the service. You know, designing some kind of local shuttle that actually, you know, addresses those needs could be something to explore.
And since we're not responding tonight and you don't have an action, I think the Deputy City Administrator is going to capture everybody's comments so that she has it all together. So
Great.
thank you for those.
Thank you.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you for putting this together. I appreciate it. In general, I'll just talk about the coverage area and the proposal. I think it is a good idea to consider expanding to the Issaquah Highlands, eliminating Squawk. Now, keep in mind, I'm supporting this. It eliminates my kid's house. But I think that if I look at the demand dots, the pickups and the drop-offs, my kids can walk, and they can go to the bottom of the hill, and they can pick up the shuttle right there at the bottom. I think the Highlands, however, because the densities are there, the number of people and the demographics in terms of number of young people in there and people that have shown propensity to use transit, I think expanding to the Issaquah Highlands does make sense within the contract parameters and the costs that are involved. I would like to hear further discussion from my colleagues, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, it's tough. You know, it's unfortunate too because Squawk and Talus were the original two neighborhoods where we said there's a last mile problem that exists here and we want to serve this neighborhood. What we're seeing in the data is that the Squawk neighborhood is not using this service as much. So I see this as an opportunity to experiment with the rest of the Highlands and see if this is a service that is captured even broader across the community to access the points that they need, especially from up in the Highlands, potentially being able to access the transit center more easily and that kind of thing. So I say let's move forward with the new service area and negotiate those terms. I still agree, like a few meetings back, council, hopefully in the new year with the Q4 data when that comes out, can have a council-only discussion about specifically what problems are we trying to solve, what do the desired outcomes and goals look like, so we know what success looks like at the end of the next contract, and we can have a broader discussion too then about, or at least we have something to point to when we want to have a broader discussion about what is the full range of options that we should consider to solve the problem, especially when it comes to Squawk in the future. So those are my thoughts at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ray.
Thanks. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. It's pretty clear that Squawk Mountain, the service didn't meet its objectives there, so no point in, you know, not looking at other options. So I'm not opposed to expanding the service area. I think we should also, if possible, look at alternatives to MetroFlex and see if there's a way to meet the objectives that we have outlined and that we will, as Councilmember Hall pointed out, be very clear on what our objectives are. Another way to meet those objectives that might be more effective and more cost efficient.
Thank you. Councilmember Mertz.
Thank you. I'm opposed to eliminating Squawk Mountain from the service area. The vast majority of folks who live in the Highlands are walking distance from basically the best transit that we have in the entire city. And everyone on Squawk Mountain is anywhere from 500 to 1,300 feet vertically from transit. We're not going to ask our residents to climb 1,000 feet for transit. I will agree that Squak Mountain has not used this service as much thus far as I would have expected, but the fundamental nature of transit options on Squak makes it the only option for us. So I would oppose getting rid of the only transit option available to Squak Mountain residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Council President DiMichele.
Thank you. I support changing the service area to include the Highlands. I took a look at the Metro equity priorities areas, and we have 3 of them in Issaquah, which is kind of interesting. 2 of them are in the Highlands, and 1 of them is Squak Mountain. And we know from the real effort in the Highlands to distribute affordable housing units that they are dispersed throughout the Highlands. The map that we've been shown would cover a good percentage of those. And I'm going to speculate, and hopefully I'm not stereotyping too much, but I think that our high equity priority areas in the Squak Mountain area are really gathered very close to the Newport Way, Sunset Exchange through there, the Hutchison House, and the apartment buildings that are up and down Newport Way, all of which would have access to MetroFlex by just simply walking a couple of blocks down to the Sunset Newport Way area. So I feel like we're not taking away from our high priority areas if we expand that service up into the Highlands. And I'd be glad to share this map with anybody that wants to take a look at it. But we really need to think about getting the ridership on MetroFlex up. It's going to benefit us, it'll benefit our community, and hopefully would make it a much more sustainable service if we can get that up. We have a prime market of people that have already been identified as being high transit use people, and those are low income, people with disabilities, seniors, and immigrants, and that is a good chunk of the population that are in the Highlands. So I think this will be a highly used addition to the folks in the Highlands, and I think that there will be options to use MetroFlex for the people that really need it, who live in Squak Mountain. I also wanted to add, not particularly on the topic, but I'll just add it. We are continuing to have MetroFlex discussions at the Regional Transit Committee, and there'll be another one this Wednesday. And our staff person at Sound Cities Association did a review of how much it's costing per passenger ride in other areas where MetroFlex is running. We're really kind of in the middle with that $40. There is one area where it's $140 per ride. Yes, and I said to him, that's a typo, right? And he said, no, there is an area, I won't identify it here, but so there are other communities that are spending $55 per ride and $45 per ride, so we are not the most expensive place where Metro
Deputy
is
Council
running.
President, did they talk about subsidy by Metro or not? Like Sammamish pays $0.
Yes.
King County pays for it, but here we pay. Did they also talk about how much is a King County dollar versus an Issaquah dollar?
Yes, and I don't know exactly what the
That would be
split is
super
on that.
interesting.
Yeah, it would be. So anyway, I thought it was very interesting research that as much as that $40 sounds impossible, it really is not the highest in King County. So at any rate, looking at the map where we're looking at equity priorities, I would support changing the service boundary and opening up that new market in the Highlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President?
I don't know if I have all that much to add, other than I think the areas up in the Highlands that are especially affordable housing and things like that are very useful. I appreciate that we didn't attempt to add all of the Highlands. I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to walk in certain areas, but to be able to add access to Central Park and the elementary school and others like that, I think it's really a good addition for this. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrea, do you have everything you need?
I do. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mayor Polly, I'm sorry, can I just
Oh,
ask a
yeah,
clarifying
sure. Go
question?
ahead,
So
Councilmember
just so I'm pulling a Zach, only a few more times left in my career. So just so I understand, since several of us mentioned wanting to go kind of back to problem statement definition, goals, outcomes, what I thought we had agreed to earlier was there is no budget for in this biennium to do any of kind of the actual evaluative work of different options or anything, right? What the next step here is that council themselves would have a discussion about, okay, using the information and the data that we already
Currently.
have
Yep.
at our fingertips, to have a discussion about goals and outcomes, problem statement, and then have that be a body of work that we can reference in the future when we want to allocate money to reevaluate what our options are. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, let me reiterate next steps. So for the purposes of the contract, what I heard from council feedback today was large majority support to revise the service areas as we have mapped out for this evening. So it would be to add that portion of the Issaquah Highlands and then subtract coverage from the majority of Squawk. So that's the direction that we heard from council today. So I will go back to our partners at Metro and we'll revise that contract. Should then council approve funding tonight with the mid-biennium adjustment, then the mayor would sign that contract and the contract would go into effect on January 1st. What we've also heard from council from the last meeting where we discussed MetroFlex and a little bit from tonight is the desire to evaluate these services more earlier on than what we've done with this pilot project and more continuously. And so we've also talked about the desire to do a more in-depth discussion on what are the goals for this service, maybe some targets for the service, and then we can use those to evaluate the MetroFlex services or evaluate other options if there are other options that meet those goals better. And what we had talked about in the October discussion with council was the ability to have that conversation early on next year in 2026. The issue that we have tonight is that this contract expires in December 31st of this year. So those would be the next steps. Again, revising the contract with a new service area, adding on the Issaquah Highlands, subtracting Squawk, and then coming back to council early on in 2026 once we have data from Q1 as to how this new service area is operating, and also be able to have a conversation on what those goals are for this service that council has.
Andrea, one thing to clarify, I think Councilmember Hall was getting at the 2026 budget. Does it have a allocation for studying other alternatives? Is there staff resources coming in to do that study as well? Or is it just goals and outcomes for this extension of the pilot? Is that all that we're committing to in 2026?
I think what we had so there is no additional funding for study of transit services or additional transit services.
In this budget.
In this budget. There's no additional funding. I think what we had talked about last time was that we could use existing staff resources to have the conversation with what are your goals and objectives for additional transit services. So, and then use that discussion to figure out, is MetroFlex services the correct one, or do we want to evaluate other options? At that point, depending on the results of that conversation, we may need to come back and seek additional staffing resources. But I think for the first couple of steps, I think we can handle that with the resources we have on hand.
That's clear? Okay. So any other final clarifications? Otherwise, I'm going to let Andrea to leave the microphone. So thank you, Andrea. The next item is the 2025-2026 Mid-Biennium Budget Adjustment. This is the second year of our two-year budget. And the request before council this evening is to adopt the ordinance. And it says, is there anyone wanting to make a motion? Do you have it?
And is it both of the motions also for the property tax as well, or?
Yeah, I think we
doing
want to
them
do
separate?
discussion after each motion.
Okay.
So one motion and then discussion.
Okay. So I move to adopt ordinance number
3125.
amending the 2025-26 budget as set forth in ordinance number, is that right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
Ordinance
just-
number 3083 and amended in ordinance number 3090 concerning revenues, expenditures, and fund balance for various funds.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion?
Madam Mayor?
The City Administrator, Bob Coates?
As we ended the last portion of this discussion, there were some questions from Councilmember Hall regarding the planning contracts. I have Kristen Leeson on the line now.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
So,
that's great. You called a
Is it-
friend and
is
she
it- Is
answered.
it appropriate at this point, or would you?
Yeah, I think let's get that information out on the table and then we'll move into council discussion.
Very good, thank you. Kristen, you're there?
Also, that is staff dedication right there to jump on a council meeting. So thank you for being with us.
She was there, and there she is.
There we go. Good
There we
evening.
go. Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Perhaps could you repeat the question, Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. So I was hoping to get a better sense of scope of work for, we've allocated $150,000 for the Eco Northwest report implementation. So I was asking, I know we've done the courtyard and cottage housing kind of element of the recommendations. There's another strategy around condominiums that we couldn't, it's a little outside our lane as here at the municipal level. And then the other part was like inclusionary zoning, and there were a couple elements of that, and then there was like a list of like other things to consider, like the development bonus program and structured parking. So I was just curious if we had kind of thought through how much could we accomplish with that 150,000.
Of course. So Kristen Leeson, Planning Manager, and we have talked about it. And other things that were included in the Eco Northwest report, there was inclusionary zoning. Our original request from Eco Northwest was to help us expand the program. And they said, you can't expand a program that isn't working. So we needed to reevaluate that. We also, as a part of that study, started looking at multifamily tax exemptions to see if that would help. That was a part of it as well. The density bonus program, development bonus program now, we also wanted to expand that. And so we need to look at that. That was another situation where they said it's not really that successful now. Let's see if we can fix it first. Densities, allowing for different densities, more likely more density in our multifamily zones where we have actual density numbers. So multifamily high, we allow for 29 dwelling units per acre, and we allow for 14.52 in our multifamily medium. Perhaps allowing for more densities in those zones as well, or moving to FAR. And then there was the parking that was a struggle, and requiring structured parking, which is no longer, we're no longer allowed to require parking with multifamily, structured parking with multifamily developments. But all of that meant adjusting levers to see what exactly do we need to adjust and how much to make it work now, and then hopefully expand it as well.
What do you think, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Yeah. So do we feel, I guess what I want to just make sure I'm clear on is the $150,000, would it allow us to have all of these discussions in 26 or get started and maybe be able to talk about how we revamp the inclusionary zoning bits? Or I mean, this might be something we kind of figure out as we get into 2026 too, but I'm just curious if we thought about how much of that list, because it's a lot, it's a good amount.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
but they all work together.
Yes.
So you have to look at them at once. Whether or not that moves into 2027, I don't know. I would imagine that we can get consulting work done in 2026, and then it would be up to staff to actually do the implementation of the rest of it through the code and programs.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you jumping on to answer this question.
And Councilmember
You're
Shang?
welcome.
Just to clarify, so the 150,000 that we're proposing on spending on this is doing another consultant study, not hiring an additional staff person to work on this?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Kristen. Thank you, City Administrator. Where we left off is moved and seconded to adopt the ordinance for the 2025-2026 budget. Council discussion. Council President?
Thank you. So first of all, just very much appreciate the work that has gone into this. We have tried to be very practiced as a council as we have started in on these biennium budgets, not to make a lot of adjustments in the mid-year. And I think we're still trying to hold to that, but there were certain things here that had to be adjusted. And so this is maybe a bigger lift than we would have otherwise anticipated. I really appreciate the work in getting us up from a 7% undesignated fund balance to a 13%. I think that feels comfortable for me at the end of this 2026 year. That being said, I am particularly concerned about the street fund. Street operating is kind of my baby. I really like making sure that our pavement management and everything are taken care of. And so seeing both the, the chart that showed how much behind we're getting on maintenance of our streets in 2025, 2026, and then looking ahead and going, okay, well, that means we're going to have to spend more in future years, both for emergency repairs and just to play catch up a little bit. Yet we're also proposing a decrease in the fund balance by not transferring in $250,000 from the general fund and asking the street operating fund to absorb the $130,000 of operations overages. I just think we're putting ourselves into a really difficult situation. I would be interested from my council colleagues if there was any interest in changing that decrease in $250,000 from street operating to a decrease in the fleet fund, considering fleet fund has added $300,000 from the public safety sales tax, and so they're actually going up with this budget versus going down, or rather, our general fund is not adding to it. So I would be curious about that from other council members. And then one thing I was realizing as I was looking over it, I'm not seeing a proposed decrease or change to the Downtown Issaquah Association funding, though I know there have been some issues there. Is there anything that is changing in our general fund for 25 or 26 compared to our budget?
There weren't any changes included in the mid-biennium adjustments for funding. No reductions or no changes from what's already currently budgeted.
City Administrator, could you speak to that based on the letter we received? Is there any general fund savings that we are seeing because of changes proposed to that program in 25 or 26?
No. The money that DIA received otherwise goes to the state of Washington.
Okay.
And just because something's budgeted doesn't mean it's necessarily allocated.
Yeah. Thank you.
Deputy Council President? We're just doing comments now for past questions. So, Councilmember Ray?
Thanks, because I have to finish my thoughts from earlier. So, going to be a little bit of a Danny Downer here. We're not meeting the provisions of our financial policy. We set the policy, and it's really an important thing to have a sound financial policy and to have sound financial discipline. And when we put this policy together, 15% was a floor, not a ceiling. It was, if you read the policy, it says 15 to 20% is what the ending fund balance should be. It doesn't say, and you should just make sure you get to 15%. And we're not even getting to the 15% by the end of the biennium, which is super disappointing. And as I was mentioning earlier, the tactics we used feel a lot like moving chairs around on the Titanic, and we're not addressing the problem, which is the iceberg ahead of us. So we can move dollars from this fund to that fund to this one and defer that, but that doesn't solve the problem that we're facing, which is we really have a structural budget problem. And I really appreciate the idea of doing a long-term financial planning and modeling, because I think we have to understand how real this cliff is. And that way we can start to have some, make those hard decisions. But it's really, there is no optimism in this budget. And as Mayor Pauly said, this is a scraping by, which is really disheartening to me. And fund balances are really, really important, because we don't know when we're going to have that next unexpected expense. Oh, bomb cyclone, something like that. Those happen, and we can continue to chip away at those balances, and all of a sudden we're in a financial crisis. And the other thing that I worry even more about than an unexpected expense, because I think we have more buffers for those, is an unexpected drop in revenue. And we are very blessed in this town to have a robust sales tax revenue base. And we are, all the models, all the pundits, we are on the precipice of some sort of a recession, and we're going to see a drop in sales tax revenue. And we've been riding the sales tax revenue for a long time, so we don't have, we're not going to see that going on. So I'm concerned going forward how we can continue to spend without the revenue to back it up, and recognizing that in periods of really high inflation where we've got costs that are tied to CPI and we have a 1% property tax escalator, how are we going to balance this budget? So not super excited about the budget amendments as presented, not super excited about the mid-buy true-up, and really not excited about the prospects for the end of the biennium.
Thanks, Councilmember Ray. Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not for the first time will I say I will miss Chris Ray on this council. No, I mean it really seriously. I love how honest he always is, particularly on these financial matters. And I completely understand his concern. This whole subject of aiming for this 15% and having it be a floor and not a ceiling has been a point of mine for, oh gosh, at least 10 years. But I'm going to support the bill that's in front of us this evening for a couple of reasons. One is that I think that we have reserve capacities in places that we didn't 15 years ago. So to the question about another bomb cyclone, I think we actually have some resiliencies built into the system that would allow us to respond to, heaven forbid, something like another bomb cyclone. The other thing is, I think it's important to take small steps first. I think that we are all saying here today that it's not good to get below 15%. And if in 12 months we're still below 15%, we will probably have to take larger steps than we're taking this evening. But I do think it's important to try to maintain the systems that you have in place and the people that you have in place and the services that you have in place as a community. And so I think, I don't know, maybe there's an element of intuition to it for having done this a number of times. This feels like the right step, but I think everybody here on the dais understands that if this continues, if the the next time we see it below 15%, we may have to take larger steps that involve more painful cuts than we're looking at today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilmember Zhang.
Yeah, I generally agree with what Councilmember Martz said. I think this is definitely a big improvement over the first budget forecast that we were presented. The fact that it is balanced largely with one-time, basically, just moving funds from one bucket to another is definitely not something we want to keep doing. I will say, though, I think it's going to, when we're developing the 2027 to 28 budget, I think that's going to be something where, I think this financial conversation next year, we need to start in January of, the strategic conversation, because I think what we do in 27 to 28 is going to be very different than what we've done thus far. There's been many years of spending down fund balances, and now we've gotten to the point where we really can't do that, and we need to backfill our ending fund balances. I do think, from the perspective, like one of the things that I was originally concerned about was, if your fund balance gets too low, then that can start to affect your credit rating. But we do have that, restricted fund balance that's from the sale of facilities, so that, from a credit rating perspective, they count that. So I think that kind of assuaged my concern on that piece. And we do have that flexibility with that $9 million from the sale of City Hall Northwest that we can use as a reserve if things really go sideways. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but that is something that, makes me more tolerant of the fact that we technically, for our own internal purposes, only have a 13% expected fund balance at the end of 2026. One thing I am concerned about, just like as a general concept, is with this affordable housing study spending another $150,000 on consulting fees. I don't really, I do think that we do need to, figure out how to, get housing built in central Issaquah. I just remain skeptical that, continually like bringing on consultants to do these things is, especially on the inclusionary zoning piece. We did the Pioneer program in 2023. I don't think we're at the point yet where we, strongly believe, at least for me, that we need to, rejigger that whole thing. And so spending $150,000 on that doesn't seem like something that we should be doing in 2026. And also just like philosophically, I have this belief that we should be, striving to develop expertise in-house with staff on these types of issues. And so, spending $150,000 on a consultant, to me, again, especially given the budget situation that we're in, doesn't seem like a great use. So, but other than that, I think the other amendments are fine. I think the other thing that I am a little bit concerned about is the expected, $500,000 in estimated, general fund underspend. Like that is a significant portion of how we're getting our estimated fund balance up. And I think, I certainly trust Director Garcia's judgment that this might be something, these are all things, given new information, we actually expect that to happen. But I do think that relying on underspending in the budget, underspending our budget as a way to balance the budget doesn't seem like a good best practice. So, something to keep in mind moving forward into future biennia.
Thanks. It also falls in the category of a scrape, to be honest.
Yeah.
Next speaker. Councilmember Hall?
Yeah, sure. Another very difficult year for budget development. So I think first and foremost, like some of the other council members have done, we've got to thank staff for their tremendously hard work. We give you a lot of feedback, mostly in terms of areas where we shouldn't look for cost savings. And so you had to do all this creative work. We had staff going line by line trying to find underspend as well. So I appreciate the due diligence that you've done and the proposal that we have here before us. I also feel comfortable with ending fund balance of 13% by the end of the biennium. In fact, I think my feedback a few weeks ago was 12% seemed realistic, so I was actually pleasantly surprised that we could get to 13 by the end of the biennium, especially recognizing we've identified a problem mid-biennium and we need to build ourselves a ramp into the next biennium. So I also agree with other council members that there are some challenging budget discussions ahead that council should welcome as we head into budget development for the new biennium. It sounds like the council is going to get a great retreat early next year. Isn't that right, City Administrator? So I would imagine. What's that?
You can join.
Oh, I will plan on tuning in on YouTube. How's that? Anyways, I look forward to seeing what council priorities are there to figure out next steps. I think I am okay with the street fund impacts because I was looking through when we were studying the financial policies, there's a bit on the reserve level target for special revenue and for capital projects, and this does seem to align with our financial policies around these kinds of funds. You described kind of like monitoring it to stay consistent with need and use of specific purpose of that fund, which is in here. And then one other thing that strikes me in this policy is that special revenue funds, by their nature, are funds used for specific purposes, and the corresponding fund balance will be used to solely support that purpose. So it's also, and maybe this is a conversation council wants to have around setting policies, specific targets for these different funds, but it seems like the intent in this language is that we shouldn't be collecting money just to collect money in fund balance. We should be spending it on public priorities as much as possible. So I think you've aligned that well with the proposal that you bring before us today. I also want to shout out assistant to the city administrator, Dale Markey Crimp. I just want to thank you for drafting the memo on the public safety sales tax. I think it captures very well the problem, our need in public safety, and how expenses have outpaced our ability to meet those needs. And so this is a fantastic document for council to base future decision-making on, a fantastic document for communicating with the public and really explaining our rationale for why we felt it was necessary to do this, recognizing this is a tool that is challenging to use when our hands are tied on other tools. So thank you very much. I appreciate the work that went into that as well. And those are my remarks.
Great comments. Thank you. Councilmember Joe, followed by Deputy Council President.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Garcia, fantastic work on this budget. I just remember that I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. And I think that you worked and the city administration worked very hard to get to something that is workable and getting us a ending fund balance that is moving up over time to 13. I remember Councilmember Hall saying 12, and we got to 13, which is fantastic. So thank you. I'll be supporting the motion in general. There are always things that I could nitpick at, so to speak. But again, I'm not going to let perfect be the enemy of good, because this is about as good as we can get at this time, and I'll be supporting the motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Council President.
Thanks. First of all, I want to join Councilmember Martz in saying I'm going to very much miss Councilmember Ray. It's always good to hear his analysis, and even when it's sort of sad and depressing. So, and thanks to Director Garcia, wonderful job that you did. It's really, I appreciate Council President Walsh bringing up the street fund, but you know what? I think a year from now we're going to be facing even harder decisions that are going to be even bigger than that, and we'll be looking at some really significant losses in some of the favorite things that we do. So it's going to be a tough year ahead of us. So I think right now we've got the best thing that we can do, and I too will be supporting this. I also want to say that I agree with Councilmember Zhang and say we should start in January on this. We need to be setting what our priorities are. We really need to be thinking through. It's like choosing, like the old saying goes, between your favorite kids, which one do you choose? And that's going to take some really hard thinking, and also a lot of listening to our community. So good job, and I will be supporting this, but I agree with Councilmember Ray that we are heading on a cliff here, and we're going to have to do some really hard work this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. So we have gone once around the room. I'm not sure if there's any additional, let me script back up here. Any additional comments? And if there is not an additional discussion, then, Councilmember Zhang?
Could I propose an amendment to remove the $150,000 for the consultant for implementing the Eco Northwest report so that we can discuss that?
Absolutely could, and whether folks support you or not, someone can second it just so we can have a discussion about it.
Great.
So go ahead, make a motion.
I guess I move that we remove the budget amendment to add $150,000 for consultant fees to implement the Eco Northwest report recommendations.
And is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Zhang, why don't you start off and tell us why you're proposing the motion?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I think just from a cultural perspective, I think being overly reliant on consultants to implement some of these changes is problematic. I think we should be cultivating internal expertise. I also believe that, some of these changes that we are considering exploring, things like reevaluating inclusionary zoning. I mean, we just redid the Pioneer program in 2023, and I don't think we're at the point where we need to spend, tens of thousands of dollars reevaluating that. So I'm proposing removing it, and just given the budget situation that we're in, that could be it's also something where if we decide we really need to do it, I'm fine pushing it to 2027 or beyond.
And City Administrator, I will allow a staff component at that concerns that staff may want to talk about it, but I'd like to get the council to all kind of talk it through first. Whether or not we can grow the expertise that the consultant service would actually provide.
Are you looking for a comment now? You want to
Nope,
wait for a comment?
Not looking for
Okay.
a comment now. I just wanted to let you know I heard you talking, and I think if you want to talk about whether or not that expertise could be grown within the staffing that we have or not, that would be a good piece of information to add for their discussion. But I would like to go through. We have several council members that want to speak.
Great.
Got it. Councilmember March, you seconded.
I did. I find Councilmember Zhang's argument compelling. I also I've had a growing concern about the amount that we spend on consultants in general over time, and I think that we may be entering a phase where we need to be more cautious about consultant spend. Thank you.
Council President?
Thank you. I am generally not a fan of producing additional reports, and so generally I think I agree with the idea that I don't know that we necessarily need to produce another report in order to implement the changes that we have in the other report. That being said, I'm not sure I'm ready to remove $150,000 that was allocated toward a fairly significant area of interest for council that we've been trying to get accomplished for many, many years. I think we have flexibility in how that money gets spent as we come on board with a new mayor and 2 new council members. So I think I would prefer to keep it in the budget, and I think we have a diligent council that if after we come back with those new members and the January retreat, if we're just not feeling like that's going to accomplish what we want, I don't think we need to spend it. But I think it would be more difficult to put something in 2026 that's not in the mid-biennium budget. So I think my preference would be to keep it, but I share many of the concerns and would absolutely be willing to strip that money out if we can find a way to accomplish the shared goals of the council toward that idea.
Additional comments? Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. I'm going to be not supporting the amendment. Eco Northwest does some very fine work in the area of housing, inclusionary zoning, density bonuses. I think we heard from Kristen Leeson that our programs are not working right now, and we don't know what the answer is. And frankly, a lot of different people don't know what the answer is out there, but Eco Northwest has the ability to look at a number of cities at the same time, do the research for us, take a wider view, see what might be working in other cities, and bring it to us as we look at inclusionary zoning, density bonuses along the way going forward. This is not a topic that will be solved with Issaquah staff solely looking at it. This is something that's going to be solved on a regional basis, and Eco Northwest can bring that view to us. I do have some concerns about having staff do this, as we turn over staff all the time, and we might invest a great deal of time and effort in training one staff member on these subjects that are quite complex, and then that person will leave, and then we'll have to start again from zero. By having Eco Northwest as kind of our knowledge bank or our information bank, we're able to retain that knowledge and keep that knowledge for us through reports going forward. So I would not be supporting the stripping out of $150,000 from the budget. Thank you.
And are there additional commenters before I do a second round? Councilmember Ray?
Oh, if you want.
Question? Okay.
I believe we already received the Eco Northwest report. Is the concept here that we would be re-engaging them specifically with the 150,000?
Kristen's still on the line. Kristen?
That's an option to re-engage Eco Northwest. We can also go out with an RFP and RFQ. However, Eco Northwest already knows the information. They know that they've already presented. They don't have to research again. So that is absolutely an option to go back out to them.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen, now that you're online, there were two parts to Councilmember Zhang's comments. One was, could we cut the money, and can we do this work internally? What is this work, and why don't we do it internally?
Because this is not planning work. This is economics. And I'm not an economist. I don't know. I don't do marketing. I don't do building. None of us do. We know how to plan. We know how to work with developers. We know how to do long-range planning. We know what regional issues are, but we do not do economics. Okay. So we need someone to come in and do the economics for us and say, this is what's economically what is going to work with builders, more likely with developers. And that's not something we do.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. We have not gone all the way around the dais. So Councilmember Ray, and then anybody else who hasn't spoken?
Thanks. Thanks, Kristen, for that, because I was kind of thinking I have a different view of consultants, and it might be just my own bias and background.
As a consultant.
But they are not a panacea, and they don't solve all ills. But there are times when used effectively, they are the most cost-effective way to solve a problem or answer a question. So not opposed to spending the money on consultants, and it would probably not be practical to build all of the potential skills that we might need in-house. We would need a staff of 500. And so that doesn't resonate with me. That being said, is this the most important $150,000 we can spend this year? And I don't know that anybody here has convinced me that it is the most important $150,000 we could spend.
Going all the way around, Councilmember Hall, have you spoken already? No. Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting against the amendment too. I mean, it just seems counter to, this was the #1 priority of the entire council when we were doing the planning, kind of the long-range planning prioritization exercise of the work plan. We've been saying we want to implement this report for years now. Councilmember Hunt was here with us and chair of the planning committee when we were doing this. So I also think like the Pioneer project, while important, is a very small element of some of this work, and in doing the economics of kind of the inclusionary zoning, as you mentioned, Director Leeson. By the way, did I just promote you to director? Right,
You
okay.
did. Nice, Kristen, congratulations. Oh, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
that's 150 right there. That's well, now I've lost where I was going with that. But I'm gonna, I still think it's important to have this in our budget. There's a lot of elements in here, even outside of the inclusionary zoning bits, that are independent from the Pioneer program and some of the work that we've done, which is still underutilized, that are really important, again, has been our top priority, and so I'm going to vote no. Thanks.
Anyone who has not spoken yet that would like to speak to the amendment? Otherwise, I'll call for the amendment. Kelly, Councilmember Shang, did you write it down? Was it just to remove the $150,000 for the
Yes.
additional housing study? Okay, can I use that, or do we have more? Okay. So it has been moved and seconded to amend to move that line item of $150,000 for additional housing work. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's 3. All those opposed?
Nay.
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 Okay.
The amendment fails 4-3. We'll go back to the main motion. Is there any?
Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask to get some clarity on that vote count? I trust the total, but I
Yes, you
could
can.
use to see hands.
So the ayes first, hands. The nays second.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other discussion? Motions? We'll go to the main motion. It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance number
Sorry, 3125.
3125, amending the 2025 budget as set forth in ordinance number 3083 and amended in ordinance number 3090 concerning revenues, expenditures, and fund balances for various funds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
That carries 6-1 with Councilmember Ray in opposition. The next item, also related to budget, is AB 9052, the 2026 Property Tax Levy, and the ask before council this evening is to adopt the ordinance. And again, we have Finance Director Kristen Garcia to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, administration is seeking authorization for the city council to adopt the 2026 property tax levy ordinance. A public hearing on the proposed ordinance was held on October 20th, 2025. State law allows the city to increase the property tax by 1% plus new construction, and the proposed ordinance reflects the increase of 1%. The increase is about $108,000 from the prior year. The total levy is estimated to be about $10.9 million in 2026. In terms of impact to the taxpayer, a taxpayer with a property value of $800,000 could pay about $475 in 2026 with the proposed increase of 1%. A taxpayer with a property value of $1.1 million would pay about $652 in 2026. So administration is recommending adoption of the property tax levy ordinance reflecting the 1% increase. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Kristen. My place. Does council have any questions for our director? Seeing head shakes no. Not seeing any questions. Can somebody please make a motion? Council President?
I move to adopt ordinance number
3126.
levying property taxes for the city of Issaquah for the fiscal year commencing January 1, 2026 on all property, both real and personal, in said city, which is subject to taxation for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on the services of said city for the ensuing year as required by law.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? I am not seeing any positive head nods. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries unanimously, 7-0. I'm just going to check with the council to see if you'd like to have a 5-minute break before we move into the last item. Sorry, Councilmember Joe, there's more yeses than noes, so we're going with the yeses. It's 5 minutes. Wait for Tisha to come back. Tisha, once you're settled, let's give Wes a call. Welcome back. We took a short break. We're still on regular business. The next item is AB 9017, the Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 Crossing Study Update. The action before council this evening is to approve it, and I'd like to invite Deputy City Administrator Andrea Lenner and Senior Transportation Engineer Greg Lucas to present this item. Welcome both.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. I'm back again, Andrea Lenner, Deputy City Administrator. And I wanted to talk about this project and kick it off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Greg for the bulk of the presentation. I want to make it clear about what we're asking for tonight when we ask you to accept the study and approve of the preferred alignment. That's what we're asking for you to do tonight. And by accepting this study and approving the alignment, we're hoping to put a bookmark in place for this project, acknowledging all the work that has been performed and also knowing that we have many decisions ahead of us, including whether or not we're going to move forward with finding the funding to implement this project, whether or not we're going to build it as conceived in the study. So there's a lot of decisions ahead. Accepting the study and approving of the preferred alignment is not a commitment to build this project as it's conceived in the study. It's merely acknowledging the work that has been done, that we've been answering, that the study answers the questions that we wanted answers to as part of the scope of the study. And we're going to get into that a little bit. I want to take a step back I want to take a little step back about this project because this is a long-term project that we have been talking about, a new crossing of I-90. And it's a very visionary project, a project that we have been contemplating for over 10 years as we considered what the growth of Central Issaquah and the entire city is going to look like. So when we adopted the Central Issaquah plan, a new crossing was contemplated in the environmental impact statement. In addition to many other streets, new streets that we would be adding to complete our transportation grid along the valley floor in Central Issaquah. So this new crossing contemplates not the Issaquah we see today, but a future Issaquah that is 8 to 12 stories tall, which is what our current zoning allows in Central Issaquah. So it anticipates a lot of growth, and again, this is a long-term project. And it's really in response to concerns that we heard at the time with the Central Issaquah upzoning that occurred. How are we going to accommodate this growth? How are we going to get people around and improve those north-south connections, knowing that I-90 really is a big barrier to travel? So at the time, the community wanted us to look at a multimodal crossing that includes a connection for cars, bikes, and pedestrians alike. And we didn't know what kind of crossing this would be. So as we started this study, we considered, okay, if we were to have a new crossing of I-90 to better connect the community in the future, is that an overcrossing or an undercrossing? As we started the study, we had no idea what that was going to be. If we were going to do another crossing, where would it be, especially given critical areas, growth patterns, properties that would be suitable for this, how it would affect traffic patterns, and what the community would like to see for where this would be. So all of those questions we contemplated at the start of this study, and we believe the study answers those questions, but raises quite a few other questions. So more in the background, in 2019, we completed the Interchange Justification Report, the IJR, which looked at could we have another crossing and entrance and exit from I-90 and Issaquah? From that study, we said, well, we need to figure out where exactly that would be. Is it feasible? What would it look like? And then in July 5th, 2022, Council directed the administration to provide budget for this project using American Rescue Plan Act funds. So we had ARPA funds. Director Garcia talked about some of those ARPA funds earlier and how they have now been spent. And this was one of the projects that was funded by that extra funding. And so we have here, the consultant contract has been approved. We've done more outreach with the community and more study, and Greg is going to get into that. And so, again, what I wanted to stress was that the action for council tonight is to accept the study and approve of that preferred alignment. And what that means is not a commitment to build the project as is, but just acknowledging that we've done this work for the project as conceived, which is a multimodal crossing, that that this is probably the best alignment. We've turned over every rock we can for this scope of the project to find the best alternative that we can. So Greg's going to go over more details about that. But again, it's not a commitment to build. And we did anticipate a multimodal crossing because the ST3 package in their base project for light rail in Issaquah includes a bike ped bridge. And so part of the discussion tonight is just looking at what is the scope of this project, and then we're going to talk about next steps and where we're headed at the end of the presentation and how we would use this report in our work with the light rail station siting. So before we get there, though, I just wanted to clarify what we're talking about tonight, and now Greg will get into the details.
Thanks, Andrea. So my name is Greg Lucas. I'm a senior transportation engineer in the Public Works Department. And I guess we'll start with the existing conditions. This was the consultant's first task was to look at existing conditions, both, for the transportation network, but the region or the growth area as a whole. The existing conditions from a transportation perspective has limited options for north-south crossings due to the I-90. Only one of the crossings that exists is in the designated growth center. That is the SR 900 or 17th Ave Northwest crossing. The 4th Ave Northwest crossing and Front Street crossings are east of the growth center. The SR 900 crossing is owned and operated by the state. It shares traffic with other cities, and it has a non-motorized portion of the crossing adjacent to it. However, it's a little difficult to get to and from it due to all the existing traffic within the interchange. To provide an overview of the project, the initial concept includes 2 vehicular lanes, 1 in each direction, with the 3rd lane added where necessary to accommodate turning movements. The scope also incorporates bike lanes protected by landscape strips and 8-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the street. This is consistent with the street standards adopted for a core street in central Issaquah. The cross-section could be refined in the future, but the street standards are what was used for the purposes of the study. And the crossing would be located within the designated regional growth center. On the slide, you'll see the outline of the growth center in white, which I'm sure you've seen plenty of times, and I added a few concentric circles in there to help illustrate where the center of the growth center is, which helps with transportation. And the benefits of the project include improved north-south mobility and stronger connections for both vehicles and non-motorized users. And it supports the vision outlined in the Central Issaquah Plan in creating a thriving, sustainable commercial core. Additionally, the crossing is anticipated to support local mobility to the future light rail station, which is also anticipated to be in the growth center. The purpose of the study was to identify the preferred crossing location for a multimodal crossing of I-90. At a high level, the process began with a broad exploration of concepts. Essentially, all ideas were considered valid starting points. From there, the study conducted a high-level feasibility analysis. This included considerations such as the groundwater conditions, geotechnical challenges, elevation differences, or the lack thereof. Gilman, I-90, and Pickering Place are all at similar elevations, so getting the grade necessary to go over is challenging. After ruling out the unfeasible options, the remaining viable options were evaluated against the project goals and criteria. By last summer, when the study was presented at an informational update, that process had been completed. I think we were down to 5 concepts at that time, 2 of which were pretty burdensome and didn't really meet the goals and were eliminated, and 3 advanced to the evaluation stage. Throughout the course of the study, the administration has engaged with the community throughout several efforts. The first step was a high-level online survey designed to gather input and help identify priorities. As the study progressed into exploring the options, the administration began meeting with the property owners within the area. These meetings provided an opportunity to explain the study and collect feedback on what the property owners would like to see in a crossing. In December of last year, the administration hosted a public open house at Tibbetts Manor. I think we had about 20 to 30 boards there, and about 25 members of the community showed up, which were, we had pretty long in-depth conversations with those who were able to make it, which was right after the bomb cyclone. We had to push it back due to that. And finally, a project website is on the city's website, and it would be updated again at the conclusion of the study to reflect the final outcomes. All right, next for community board engagement. The administration has met twice, both with the Transportation Advisory Board as well as the Economic Vitality Commission. The first discussions took place in the summer of 2024 when the study was introduced and project goals and evaluation criteria were presented for feedback. And then early this year in the spring, the administration returned to share the recommended crossing location. The proposal ultimately received support, and we received some feedback emphasizing the importance of reaffirming the crossing location before getting too far ahead, and particularly considering the station area planning. And board members also highlighted the need to ensure that non-motorized connections are thoughtfully designed and fully incorporated and are incorporated as the project advances into an engineering phase. I guess the video plays automatically. For this item, the administration is proposing that the council approve the study's preferred crossing location of 11th Ave Northwest to 11th Ave Northwest. At a high level, the crossing concept involves elevating Gilman Boulevard to achieve the necessary grade difference to span over the freeway, ultimately connecting into the existing 11th Ave Northwest on the north side in Pickering Place. And while 11th Ave Northwest does not exist today on the south side of I-90, it is part of the planned future street grid as development occurs in the growth center. To minimize impacts on the adjacent parcel to the south of Gilman, the concept was modified from the initial concept. This was to include the eastbound bypass lane, which does not get elevated. The video shows it. I'll highlight it once it gets back to it. There's the eastbound bypass lane on along Gilman. That's what that's referring to. And similarly, the frontage along the south side will not be elevated, allowing pedestrians and cyclists to travel without navigating up and down an elevated Gilman Boulevard. The initial planning level cost estimate for the full project is approximately $110 million. That figure represents engineering, property acquisition, permitting, and construction. However, it is not adjusted for inflation due to uncertainty on when or if it advances. But actual costs would be significantly higher over time. A 2040 construction cost could see maybe a 50% increase in that. So my next plan was to go through the video, but it's been playing. I don't know if there's any questions about that, let me know. Proposal continued. The 11th Ave Northwest to 11th Ave Northwest crossing best met the project goals and evaluation criteria of the study. Some key advantages of this concept were the proximity to Sound Transit's representative project. What that means is what was voted upon. While Sound Transit has not began their stationary planning, they indicated to us in conversations that extending the project further east will increase costs, and given their current budget challenges they face, they recommended using the voter-approved representative project as a baseline, which is a station that is located near the I-90 corridor near 17th Ave Northwest. By elevating this crossing, it avoids many of the challenges posed by the ground conditions and high water table. This alternative is considered the most feasible to build and fund with the lowest cost estimate among the options. It also could be phased if needed. Build part of Gilman first, for example, as a separate contract from the rest of it. It also, and it also provides the best balance between vehicular, adding vehicular capacity as well as non-motorized access due to the location and shorter length of it. With limited existing connections, the crossing would enhance access to and from Pickering Place area just north of I-90. And a drawback of this alternative is the need to carefully design non-motorized connections to make it easily accessible and safe to navigate due to the elevation of Northwest Gilman Boulevard. Each alternative offers benefits and drawbacks. None of them are perfect. However, this one performed the best in terms of meeting the project goals and evaluation criteria. The study also dug a little deeper into two other crossing alternatives. I'll start with the alignment from 11th Ave Northwest on the north side to 12th Ave Northwest on the south side. How this concept works is to achieve the grade necessary. I guess we'll flip to the south side. You'd have to raise Gilman up a couple feet, and as you move north along the alignment, it shifts a little bit west. That is to extend the runway length, ensuring sufficient elevation to span the freeway. From there, it ties back into 11th Ave Northwest on the north side while attempting to minimize impacts to the adjacent properties. However, it results in a fairly lengthy crossing. The benefits of this concept, similar to the previous one, it aligns well with the representative project of Sound Transit, supporting potential stationary planning. Perhaps less options for the park and ride due to the span length, but there'd be some options still for that. It also reduces the impacts from the existing ground conditions and is centrally located in the growth center. Some drawbacks for this one. It's positioned nearest to an existing crossing. However, there is 5 block lengths between 12th and 17th, so it didn't feel too close and to remove it from consideration. However, we get asked that question quite a bit. And the crossing length is the greatest of all the options, which will feel burdensome for the non-motorized users. It'd be hard to, once you're on there, you kind of might feel trapped if you're going somewhere in Pickering from the south or something like that. And it has greater impacts to the property owners, reducing some future development potential, and it's got a higher cost estimate at $127 million. Moving east, the final alternative evaluated was the Northwest Maple to Lake Drive crossing. How this alternative works is on the south side. The alignment would begin at the existing intersection of Maple and Gilman. From there, it would lower slightly, although only a few feet, because it's got to raise I-90. So getting it as low as we could would help minimize the amount of I-90 that would need to be elevated. The alignment would then connect to the existing roundabout at 62nd Ave in Lake Drive, which was recently constructed as a part of the, with the Costco development. However, initial traffic modeling indicates this intersection would perform better if signalized with an added crossing. So we're showing here to replace that roundabout with the traffic signal. In terms of pros, it moves vehicles well. It moves the greatest number of vehicles compared to the other options. However, it's not a huge difference, and perhaps moving traffic to areas less than ideal with the mini roundabout on Maple Street and the at-grade crossings through the Costco campus. But the greatest risk with this is securing the approvals from outside agencies. State DOT officials indicated that the existing traffic on 90 would need to be maintained throughout the construction. In order to do this, they'd have interim construction phases similar to the ongoing culvert replacement in Factoria and the ones Issaquah will have coming up. And so that would be a burdensome and costly and uncertain. There's not a lot of space through this area, and there's also horizontal curves to consider, which you can't really play around with too much on freeways. The state staff also noted that no other local agency that they'd worked with has attempted a project of this complexity, which to us meant there was no precedent for reference for how to get that approved or cost estimates or design approaches for that. All the state ones are generally done with design-build contracts. And this cost estimate is about $116 million. While feasible, there's a lot of challenges with this one. However, it did perform second best in our evaluation. However, the 11th Ave Northwest to 11th Ave Northwest emerged as the clear frontrunner. So the study was presented to Mobility and Infrastructure Committee twice this year, first in June. Study findings were shared, and committee members expressed support for the concept and acknowledged the future need while also raising concerns about costs and grant funding opportunities that may change. The item remained in committee for a second meeting on September 16th. At that section, the presentation was more narrowly focused on the study itself rather than the larger project as a whole. And at that time, the committee agreed to move the item to a regular city council meeting for potential action. And in addition to that, the study was shared at a booth at the farmers market at the Pickering Barn in August. This provided an opportunity for shorter, more informal conversations with about 100 members or 100 visitors. So for timing and next step.
Hi, it's me again, Andrea Lenner. Want to talk about next steps. So again, we're hoping to close out the consultant contract, acknowledging the work that has been done and examining alternatives. Then this is where that point in time where we want to put a bookmark in the work that we've done so far. We are moving forward with a light rail station alignment planning. That study is already underway to look at what our preferred alignment alternatives are and then be able to provide that information to Sound Transit. So one of our original goals was to look at how these two giant pieces of infrastructure can complement each other, can be co-located perhaps. So we've looked at where could an I-90 crossing be. Now the next question we need to answer is light rail station. What would be our preferred location for that? And so once we have that location and begin those communications with Sound Transit and WashDOT, then we can look at these two studies together and see, are there efficiencies that we can gain with a crossing and a light rail station? And how can these really be forward compatible with each other? So there's a lot more questions to answer, a lot more to discover, and that's really where we see this headed and relating to the light rail work, which is, as I said, underway right now. And so again, just to clarify what we're asking of council tonight, we're not asking for any immediate action that would advance this project. We're not asking for funding for this project, just that we recognize the work that was done and the study that was done to determine possible alignments, and that the administration would return to council prior to initiating any further development of this project or any crossing of I-90. And so at this point, the administration recommends approval of the 11th Ave Northwest to the 11th Ave Northwest crossing alternative, and for council to conclude and accept the study. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, Greg, for the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed Councilmember Joe, Chair of the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. So if you want to summarize the committee's recommendation on this item, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This was kind of a early peek, so to speak, at what might be possible for us with this crossing. I do appreciate all the hard work that was done by staff and the consultant crew to put this study together. Just want to point out that it does align with our transportation goals in the comp plan. Transportation Goal C outlines that we should develop a multimodal balanced transportation system that will support increased transportation options for the Issaquah community. And then later in Transportation Policy C5, it asks we partner with Sound Transit in bringing light rail service to Issaquah by adopting supportive land use policies and creating safe multimodal connectivity to the new station. So just putting that work in the frame of the comp plan that we approved earlier, we approved last year, 2024, and the committee took a close look at this. There were some hard questions that were asked, and we know it's not perfect, but it is, as Deputy Administrator points out, a bookmark to accept the work that has been done up to this point. It will need to be paused until more information can come forward, both from the location of the station itself, funding issues, work with all of our other partners in making this project possible. So it is a bookmark. It's been some good work from the committee. I'll open it up to my fellow committee members because there was some added discussion and questions that were going on there, and I want to give them each an opportunity to have those aired in this forum. Thank you.
Other committee members? Councilmember Ray.
I always have a point of view. And it seems like it's always the same one. I think this is interesting. I think this was a fascinating project. I think it was incredibly opportunistic to use the ARPA funding to fund this project. I just don't, and I understand that it's aspirational and we want something big and bold to do. I just don't see how ever this gets built. Given the cost of construction, given the complexity of building something like this. And so I think it's very interesting, but beyond that, my concern about this, and every meeting we had, is this is absolutely beautiful. I wish we could do it, but I sure don't know how.
Deputy Council President?
That's a good summary. I raised a number of questions about this project as well. My concern was the engagement with the council. It's a big project. I didn't think that we had enough time to really talk about it and understand it. You look at it, it goes through a couple of shopping malls right now. The alignment is kind of interesting, but I was glad to hear that we've done outreach to the property owners. So I had all kinds of questions about it. I think that the idea that this is a bookmark, we've done a lot of work. At this particular time in history. We are facing some headwinds that are completely out of our control. One of them is the probably impossibility of getting a federal grant that would help us build this at this point. But things will change in the next 10 to 15 years while we're working on the light rail station. And the general economic outlook that we've already talked about as we were talking about the budget. The willingness of the community to support it as well. I think the community, and I do appreciate the outreach that was done. I attended the open house. When I attended the open house, I picked this alignment. I was one of the people that put the little button on this alignment because it does, it meets all of the goals of the project. And yet there were only 25 people there. And so again, does the community understand the changes that would happen if this alignment went in? I wasn't clear about that at all. I think it's been, I think it was summarized very well that it's a bookmark that acknowledges here we've got a body of research sitting here and that will be useful when we talk with Sound Transit and may be useful in the future. And we've got the study and we need to accept it and so that we can close that out. It does not obligate us to, the other thing I had, my other concern again was that $110 million, budget. So we've done this great amount of work. Let's accept it. Let's put it somewhere where it's going to be useful. And then we can come back to it when circumstances have changed or when it's more, as Councilmember Ray said, where it's more opportunistic for us to actually use this information to possibly build this project. But right now, we're not going to build it now. And we need to take some kind of formal action to close this out and then move on. So, and I do appreciate all the work that staff has done. It's really an amazing body of work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That sounds like a couple of very interesting committee meetings. So we are in the council question portion, and Councilmember Martz has his microphone up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple questions. I recall an overcrossing study that we referenced at one of our legislative meetings one January a few years ago. What was the relationship between that overcrossing study and this overcrossing study?
I believe the study that you're referencing was work done by Rowley Properties. That was a concept of what it could look like and where it could be. So it was very high level. This one is a much more in-depth study that looked at all kinds of factors. Greg went over a few of them, but this one is a much bigger study, much more in depth. Of course, the Rowleys, as a property owner in the area, were a part of the outreach process, and we took their feedback. But their study was, I think, very high level and conceptual in nature, and this one takes in many more factors.
Got it. Second question is, what kind of traffic studies were done as part of this?
So we got Jacobs. This is John McKenzie. He's worked with Jacobs Engineering, and they also happen to do the concurrency modeling. So
And it might be great. Thank you for coming up, and please identify yourself for the council, but also just tying in why concurrency in this project mesh in any way, shape, or form. Not everybody is as familiar with that, those two items.
Okay, thank you. John McKenzie with Jacobs. I'm been the project manager working with Greg and the city on this project. So I'm not the technical expert on the traffic analysis, but we did perform the traffic analysis for the study. Torsten Lienau, who also serves as really the city's traffic engineer, is on our team, and he developed synchro analysis models for both the AM and the PM, peak and off-peak. And so he used those models to study within the network, within the Central Issaquah Regional Growth Center, and intersections around that, how the different alignments would impact traffic, both along the SR 900 and Front Street alignments, and what kind of traffic it would be pulling from those. And I can't really provide more detail than that, other than the traffic report is within the study that we can make available for you.
So I'm very familiar with Torsten's work.
Yes, okay.
Did he do a full nodal analysis? Like, did he?
Full nodal analysis, yes.
Because I'm really getting at page 284 of the packet, the trade study that's in there. And it's specifically around benefit 3.2, and it's vehicle, congestion relief, basically. And this has sort of a qualitative, Consumer Reports kind of looking vibe to it. But I'm curious. I guess greater than 1,200 vehicle per hour reduction would be like the Consumer Reports best on that. So I would love to see the numbers specifically. It looks like all these options had a significant reduction in vehicles per hour in the other intersections. Is that correct?
I would have to follow up.
Okay, because it's one of the core benefits of
Yes.
of doing this, right?
Yes,
So I just wanted to make sure that there was the math behind it.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Couple more questions. All these options seem to have non-trivial impact potentially on Costco. How was the conversation? They seem more impacted by this than maybe, I guess if somebody has a business that goes away, that they're impacted. But how was the conversation with Costco, given that these options potentially have a significant impact on some of the development agreement area?
Yeah, so we met with them, kind of beginning, middle, and end. Pretty succinct response to that would be they're in favor of the crossing. They see the need for it. They kind of don't really want it going through their campus, like the Maple to Lake does, due to the pedestrian conflicts. But they kind of supported when we shared our recommended alternatives, they were on board with that one.
Would this recommended alternative require any revisions in our development agreement with Costco?
I don't know the answer to that. However, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't believe so.
I'm seeing some head shaking no.
No, we don't. No, we don't foresee any amendments to the development agreement with Costco if this was to move forward. I'll add a finer point to what Greg said about feedback that we heard from Costco. I think they recognize the benefits of having another crossing for their employees to get to and from campus, especially if it facilitates that connection to light rail. They are concerned about walkability of their campus area. They've just opened up their new buildings. There's a lot of folks that you can see walking between the buildings, and that's an environment that they really like, and their employees feel is safe. And so they're concerned about any alignment that would funnel a lot of vehicular traffic through their campus. So we were, as Greg said, that was some of their main comments, which made this one of the preferred alternatives.
And the last question, thank you for that. The last question that I have is there were emails going around earlier today associated with this, and I think Councilmember Jang had a question, and one of the answers that came back mentioned something that sort of caught my attention about an associated public structure. And that's not language that's in the report at all, or at least in the packet for us today. So I'm wondering, there are questions about what associated parking structures. I assume associated public structure means associated parking structure?
Yes, I'm sorry. Maybe I was typing that a little too fast. I did mean parking structure and not public structure. Okay. So I think I was talking about the ST3 project that the representative project contemplates not only a light rail station, but also a parking structure with 500 stalls as well as a ped bike bridge.
I see. Thank you.
Additional questions? Chair Joe, would you like to make a motion? Oh boy.
I would move to accept the Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 crossing study and approve its preferred crossing location of 11th Avenue Northwest to 11th Avenue Northwest.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Council discussion. Councilmember Zhang?
Yeah, first off, I want to thank the staff and the consultant team for all the work that's been done on this, you know, with doing like engineering studies and figuring out, you know, how exactly the angles need to go and, you know, I mean, to me, the cost is eye-popping, you know, because you have to raise Gilman or raise I-90 or all that. But, you know, so I appreciate all the detailed engineering work that's gone into this. So, you know, in my thinking about this specific project, I went back and looked at the Central Issaquah plan because this was part of the plan. So there's 3 different crossings of I-90 that are mentioned in the Central Issaquah plan. So it included multimodal crossing from 12th Avenue to 11th Avenue. We changed it to 11th and 11th, which I believe makes sense given, you know, what we've seen here. A pedestrian crossing of I-90 at Maple Avenue, which is one of the multimodal options that we assessed. You know, given Costco's perspective, I think doing a bike ped crossing there would make a lot of sense. And I think given that in the Sound Transit Plan, they claim they have funding for a pedestrian bridge, I think that's something we, you know, in our work with Sound Transit really need to have as an absolute non-negotiable. Like, if they get rid of a parking garage, fine. If they get rid of a pedestrian bridge over I-90, no, I will fight them on that. And then another thing that was mentioned in the Central Issaquah plan was a pedestrian crossing from the West Newport neighborhood to Lake Sammamish State Park. So I guess, you know, one of the things that I think potentially could have been a little bit of a missed opportunity with the study is, you know, studying what some of those bike pedestrian overpass options could have looked like. Because just in terms of the cost, those are so much less costly. And I looked up, you know, Redmond recently built some bike pedestrian bridge crossings associated with their light rail. For example, they did a bike pedestrian overpass at the Overlake Village light rail station, which cost $10.4 million compared to $110 million for the lowest cost option here. There was the new fancy one with the little tents on it, and that crosses 520, the light rail bridge, and 156, and it's diagonal, so it's very, very long. And that was $33.3 million, and that was actually fully funded by Microsoft because it connects 2 halves of the Microsoft campus. So just like looking at that data where you can build a, you know, bike pedestrian crossing for literally 10% of the cost of building the least cost crossing that allows cars, I struggle to see how this will ever get built. I mean, I do think it was useful for us to do this study. I wish that we had assessed some, you know, bicycle pedestrian options as well, including the ones that were included in the Central Issaquah plan. But, you know, I think given what we've seen, like, I'm happy to accept the results of this study with the understanding that we probably are going to have to figure out how this fits in, just given the astronomical price tag.
Thank you, Councilmember Zhang. And the answer is kind of we need all 3 of those things. It's not just one replacing the other. So we still need a place for buses, delivery vehicles, all kinds of different things. And they use pavement too. And so do electric vehicles. So it's kind of an all, not just a or. And let's go to comments. I think it's Council President next.
Thank you. Appreciate this work. It's beautiful. It's lovely to dream and see things in, you know, color and video and all of that. I have a lot of concerns about this. I think when I initially saw the idea of this 11th to 11th Avenue Northwest connection and the placement of it, it made sense to me. Seeing the more 3D images now and what that would look like with a 26-foot height of Gilman Boulevard and all of that, I am no longer sure that that meets our needs as a community. If I think about this as a potential connection location for Sound Transit, either in the middle or on one side or whatnot, I really want something that is walkable and bikeable. And the idea that a 26-foot high location would be walkable or bikeable just does not compute in my mind. So I think we have missed the mark on this, unfortunately. I just don't see how this takes the future of the Central Issaquah plan area into consideration. I know there are limited areas where we can do a crossing, and I know that there's a need for more connectivity and mobility, but I don't think we should do that while sacrificing the connection of Gilman Boulevard as a street to the businesses and property that is next to it. It just seems like a sacrifice that we shouldn't spend $100 million or more to do. So I don't think I support this at this point.
Any other comments? Councilmember Martz?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to support it this evening. My concern is continues to be around parking structures. And I just look at, again, I use MARTA as an example. MARTA's end of line are all 30-acre parcels. That's the equivalent of Tibbetts Valley Park. And so I look at the options that we've seen this evening, and I ask myself where we could put a Tibbetts Valley Park-sized parking lot associated with that, and I don't like any of the answers. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Hall, Deputy Council President.
Yeah, clarifying question. Can you talk to us about what would happen if we voted no as a council tonight on this? I mean, it's just an official action to like accept that the report is complete, right? I mean, if we vote no, is it the same outcome?
We are asking council to accept the project, which would help us conclude the work in the way that you accept capital projects when they're done and complete. And so it would be helpful to have mark this point in time as we're done with this study, that the study that we're presenting accomplish the goals of the study. If council chooses to not accept the preferred alignment, then it also doesn't sound like they prefer the other two options that Greg presented, right? Because that could be feedback we get from you tonight, that you don't agree with the administration's recommendation, but you prefer the two other alternatives that we presented, or one of the two alternatives that was presented. So I'm not hearing that from council either. So if council does not accept the study and does not approve of the preferred alignment, then I think we, without any other feedback or direction from council, I think we close the matter. The reason why we are hoping for council's acceptance is to be able to keep this study and use it to inform future decisions and say, we know that this isn't a perfect alignment. We know that we have concerns, but we have a light rail study coming, and we'll be able to use some of the information received in the process of the study to help inform future decisions. One of those is if a council 10 years from now says, you know, it'd be a great idea, we should really get a crossing of I-90, we could dig up this study and say, well, we have a study, and here's what that would entail, instead of having to redo the work. Because if we did the work over again, we believe we would come up with the same results for a multimodal crossing of I-90. So that's why we're asking council to accept the project. That's why we have a recommendation for the preferred alignment, because we don't believe that we can do much better given the conditions and the factors that we have if we were to repeat the study and do it again. It does not mean that we're going to go ahead and build this project.
City Administrator, you look like you wanted to chime in.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I think the council does have a few alternatives here. The motion on the floor is to accept the administration's recommendation for the crossing alternative. An alternate motion could be merely to receive the report.
Right. Thanks for that. Deputy Council President?
Yeah, thank you. That is what I was thinking as well, is, or that we could close out this project with maybe a letter from the council or a list of concerns that we have about this and attach that, because basically, and I hate to characterize it like this, but it's going to be put on a shelf. And it will be used at some future point. And maybe at that point, it would be very useful for future people to know exactly what the concerns of this council were at the same time that we just close this project out and just say we're done right now. So that would be my recommendation. You know, I've used this analogy before. It may not work with some of the younger folks, but it's like a Polaroid camera picture that comes into focus slowly but surely. And you start one of these big projects and it's very dim and it's kind of like murky, and then you get a little bit more clarity and a little bit more clarity. That's we're in the stage right now where it's still murky. It's just, we're just doing preliminary research, and there, you know, the concerns about the bikeways and the pedestrian crossings and things like that are really legitimate concerns. I don't think that we're quite ready to have done the research on that. So there are really legitimate concerns here, but we're not in the process where those would be addressed anyway. So I would think that perhaps we could close this project out, do a motion like that, and have a letter or some kind of memorandum that expresses our concerns to the future people that will be using this study. So that would be my idea.
Good suggestion. Also, just wanted to point out too, I mean, we're talking about the retail and properties. Sun Transit hasn't defined which properties they're going to use as part of their project. They're going to be buying out property owners that are there. New property owners will be coming in, trying to build the 10, 12-story buildings that we're talking about. There are opportunities for partners on this project. There may be somebody who wants to build a structure over I-90 that includes this crossing. So this really isn't much of anything except a feasibility study with very little details right now. And all it's being asked is to accept it. I think Deputy Council President's suggestion, if she were to put it in a motion, would be a good one, to receive and provide a council summary with the filing of the document. But you'd have to make a motion.
Would it be, so there's already a motion on the floor,
Yeah.
right? Would it be an amendment to the motion?
Yep.
Let's see, I move that we accept the
Okay. Go ahead.
report.
Well, maybe just a
good.
comment
Thank you.
here. So the maker of the motion could request that it be withdrawn, and if there was unanimous consent or a majority agreed, you could withdraw the current motion and then.
Motion, withdraw motion.
Okay.
You made the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
And so, Mayor, maybe just confirm there's no objection to withdrawing the motion.
No
that's on the
objection.
floor.
Not saying an
Okay.
objection.
And then now we can have a new motion.
Deputy Council President.
I move that we conclude this study and prepare a memorandum of concerns to be included with the study, period.
Is there a second?
Are you trying to accept the report?
Yes, accept the
Yeah.
report.
Are you?
And receive the Central Issaquah.
Second.
There we go.
It's a
There we
second.
go. Thank you.
Looking at the Deputy City Administrator, that makes sense. You have enough information. That's great. Council, did you raise your hand, Wally?
Mayor, would you mind just confirming the motion on the floor and maybe giving us a clear statement? And can I also have a confirmation who was the seconder?
Russell.
Russell. I'm sure you wrote it down, Deputy Council President.
I think I need
Just
some
wing
help.
it, and this time we'll get the city clerk to write it down.
Okay. Help me, Councilmember Joe.
Move to receive.
Move to receive the Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 Crossing Project Report and
Creation of a memo to reflect staff concerns
Yes.
with the project.
I move that.
I'm sure it was exactly those words.
Yes.
And the second, you agree with that verbiage?
Second.
Okay. Council discussion? Councilmember Zhang.
Just quick clarification on the language. Do we need to, because on the slide I saw conclude the study, do we need to say that in the, receive report, and then issue a statement of council concerns? Okay.
I think we'll use different words where, Sound Transit is following the work that we're doing, and so far we are committed to continuing that good work to get through the station design and station location. So it would be, it may be additional information required prior to a decision, but it will list everything. We want to sound like we are in a positive frame of mind as we move forward, so it'll be worded appropriately.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the motion as proposed makes a lot of sense. I think, we should receive the study and close this out, and also, for the benefit of future council members, have a clear memo that outlines, the summary of this discussion. Because there's been a lot of times when I've wondered, oh, what happened in this thing in the past, and having to watch a council meeting from 2015 or whatever, we don't want to make future council members do that. So I think that's a really good way of doing this. I think in general, I also agree that given that we didn't, we haven't even figured out where a preferred light rail alignment is, I think, saying that we need more information to decide which of these alignments is preferred given where we're going to put light rail makes a lot of sense. I'm glad we have the study that has studied all of these options so that we have the information we need to make this decision in tandem with the light rail study that's happening later this year or early next year.
Council President?
Thank you. I appreciate this adjustment. I think this makes me a lot more comfortable with the idea when we are addressing, some of our thoughts on this. I appreciate that many of the goals of creating an I-90 over or under crossing included traffic mobility. I really hope we would recognize that, particularly with an integration with a light rail station and with our Central Issaquah plan, having the idea of creating a more walkable area, that recognizing that height is really important, and wanting to ensure that we have connectivity to businesses after seeing these, not even businesses, property that lines up to this, I think would be a really important piece for me.
Councilmember Mertz?
Thank you. I'll be supporting this new measure. I want light rail in this community. I believe this community wants light rail in this community. But it's not a blank check. And so I continue to be extremely concerned about what a new parking structure will look like, given that we will be the end of the line for this. And so, I want Sound Transit. I understand the mayor's point about, continuing to be a community that is welcoming to the idea of light rail, and I want us to be that. But I continue to have serious concerns about just from having seen other metropolitan areas and how the parking situation works. And I believe folks in our community will have concerns about such a parking structure. I don't know how to solve that. I can't solve it today, but I want to put that marker out there. I really want to get to yes on light rail, but I'm not a blank check on whatever parking structure somebody wants to put into the heart of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council discussion? Deputy Council President?
Yes, and as long as we're discussing our concerns, I would also like to say that the community engagement was my major concern, and I think if that could be included in the memorandum that we prepare, this really changes the character of that whole street. So the impact to the community, the culture, everything along that street would be immense. And so I would like to see a robust discussion and information included in whatever next steps we do with this particular project. So, and I would ask if there's any other considerations that we want to be sure we have in that memorandum from the rest of the council. Thanks.
Additional discussion? Okay, Councilmember Sheng?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of concerns, reiterating the concerns about cost, also disappointment that the study didn't include any study of what the design or cost of some of these potential pedestrian overcrossings would be. I think, some of the stuff on integration with light rail, which is probably something that we're going to continue discussing as we do more studies in the coming years.
Thank you. Additional discussion? Okay. It has been moved and seconded to receive the Central Issaquah Multimodal I-90 Crossing Report and prepare a memorandum of concerns to be included with the study. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries 7-0. Thank you, and thank you both, all three of you, for your comments and information this evening. So that passed unanimously, and we're going to move into the next section of our meeting, which is committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Sheng.
No report from me this evening.
Councilmember Zhou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Mobility and Infrastructure Committee meeting scheduled for November 24th will need to be canceled. We do not have a quorum for that meeting. We'd ask the administration to take the street standards landscaping update and reschedule it for January 26th. Cascade Water Alliance will be meeting, the board will be meeting on November 19th at 3:30 in the afternoon. Our Mayor Polly, will be honored for her service on that committee and her years of dedication to big issues such as PFAS and getting the Tacoma water line to our fair city in the future. The Public Affairs Committee meeting is scheduled for December 3rd. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met today. We went over the criteria for applications for funding for next year. And we are having another meeting on December 8th. It's a special meeting from 2 to 3:30 at Pickering for the public. And we'd ask that anyone interested in the criteria, come on over and give us your opinions. Thank you. It's 10 o'clock. Good night.
Councilmember Hall.
Thanks. Eastside Fire and Rescue, our last board meeting was last Thursday, November 13th. Approved apparatus financing agreement with Fire District 10, so you'll see some new apparatus in 3 to 5 years, 3 years if we're super lucky, but probably 5+ years. We got an update on our interim agreement with Fire District 27, that's Fall City, for fire admin services. Approved the firefighter collective bargaining agreement, which was a huge effort on behalf of Chief Lane. So we appreciate that. Approved outgoing Chief Lane's final performance eval, and then we approved the incoming Fire Chief Will Aho's employment agreement with us. It was also my last board meeting as chair, so Councilmember Pam Stewart from Sammamish has officially taken over. She's chair of Eastside Fire and Rescue right now. So I would also like to officially request a demotion to the alternate position to promote our current alternate to my voting position for next month's meeting in December. So I'll maybe ask the three of you to figure that out. I was kind of looking through section 2.04 of the rules and procedures, and I don't know, it seemed like maybe there had to be like a survey sent out to the council members, but maybe there's a way to get around that. It's just important we can do the shifting before the December meeting. So
that sounds great.
Anyways, thank you. And then also RIA 8 Salmon Recovery Council. Our next meeting is this Thursday. On the agenda is previewing 2026 grant opportunities, approving other grant funding recommendations, our 2026 state legislative priorities, and a success story, the Lower Issaquah Creek Restoration Project, which I toured. That was very cool. After that, the next meeting will be on January 15th, so I hope we can appoint someone new, cough, cough, to represent Issaquah soon after I leave. And that concludes my report.
You neglected to mention that you were recognized at the meeting with a brand new type of EFOR recognition plaque that I hadn't seen before.
Nice
very, very impressive.
Yeah, thank you. It was very embarrassing. I told them,
It
I
is
begged them to
embarrassing.
stop. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get to Councilmember Ray, I'm just going to let you all know that this is Councilmember Ray's last council meeting. And so I am not going to completely call him out on all of this, but I did want you all to know that this is his last meeting. And tomorrow night at the committee meeting, I hope to come by and provide some words about the service that Councilmember Ray has brought to our community. And how about your report?
I really want to say no report after that. But the 4th of July Commission did meet today, and we were introduced to our new executive director. Wally pulled a rabbit out of that hat to find somebody to do that role on a volunteer basis. So kudos to the city administrator, Janie Bube. We got it right. Anyway, the commission is continuing to make progress on planning events to celebrate the country's semi-quincentennial.
Thank you. Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee met last Wednesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. It was an online meeting. No action was taken. I want to point out that SCA's annual meeting is going, it's after our next council meeting, but only just. It's Wednesday, December 3rd at 5:30 p.m. And it's really important that we have good attendance at it because it's going to be at Pickering Barn here in Issaquah. So we are going to be the host city for the annual meeting. Very exciting. The food is always delicious. Services, Safety, and Parks will be meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. here in council chambers. We only have one issue, but it is COM 0182, e-motorcycle and e-bicycle ordinance. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Deputy Council President.
Thank you. On Friday, I attended the Eastside Transportation Partnership meeting, and we adopted the 2026 state legislative agenda for ETP, and I sent copies of that to everyone on the council. We also received a report on the repair schedule for the Ship Canal Bridge. And if you're wondering what that is, it is that big, huge I-5 bridge that takes you to the University of Washington. It's been 60 years since its last major repair. Repairs will be conducted over the next 3 years. They will resurface the entire bridge, do joint repair, and install drains to carry away standing water more efficiently than is occurring right now. The bridge currently carries 240,000 vehicles each day, so it's going to be a major disruption to traffic when they are working on the project. But they have a robust community engagement plan to help people find different ways of getting to work and so forth. And that's the only other thing that's on my calendar is the Regional Transit Committee meets this Wednesday, and the Board of Health meeting is on Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Council President Walsh.
No report.
So for the mayor's report this evening, there will not be an executive session. I also wanted to remind the council about former Issaquah City Council member Eileen Barber's memorial. Eileen recently passed away, and a celebration of life to honor her will be held on November 22nd at Flintoff's Issaquah Funeral Home beginning at 11 a.m. Eileen will be remembered for her independence, strength, and unwavering devotion to her family and community. In lieu of flowers, the family encourages donations to organizations supporting dementia research or local community causes in Issaquah in recognition of Eileen's lifelong spirit of giving. We have some upcoming events. 9 to 5, the musical is going to be open at Village Theater on November 18th. The Village Theater's production of 9 to 5, the musical, opens tomorrow. The High Energy Show brings the beloved 1980 film to life along with Dolly Parton's iconic tunes. Get ready to clock in for outrageous fun. This hilarious and heartfelt musical runs through January 4th, 2026, including an American Sign Language performance on December 6th and a captioned show on December 20th. To learn more about the shows and buy tickets, visit the Village Theater's website. And a holiday pop-up event will take place at Blakely Hall this Sunday, November 23rd from 11 to 3. Local artisans and vendors will offer unique gifts, crafts, and decor to help you find the perfect gift. Stop by this holiday pop-up to support your local artisans and vendors. And the annual Turkey Trot, it returns to downtown Issaquah on Thanksgiving morning. The fun and casual 5K run, walk, trot is a beloved local tradition that brings the community together to fundraise for the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. Register early to beat the long lines on race day, and don't forget to wear your Thanksgiving costumes and accessories. That concludes the mayor's report, and the next item we have is good of the order. Does anybody have items? Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank you for attending and speaking at the Veterans Day event on Tuesday. Your words were inspiring to those of us that haven't served, and I hope an inspiration to those that have given to their country. Sarah Perry was also there and gave some remarks, and it's a really nice event to attend to honor those that have served our country. I also attend the Leadership Eastside 20th Anniversary Emerald Gala on Saturday night. As many of you know, cities have sent many of their staff to Leadership Eastside. Christopher Wright, a former planner of ours, was a person that went through that program as well. It was nice to see that Leadership Eastside has achieved 20 years of training leaders in the area, and many of them have gone on to serve as mayors and council members and other influential people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Any other good of the orders? If not, I will do a few meeting announcements. The next regular city council meeting, and the first one without Councilmember Ray, is December 1st. The anticipated agenda items include an informational update on the asset management system, Acres of Diamonds Affordable Housing Covenants, and the City Council vacancy process for Council Position Number 2. So there being no executive session this evening, we are adjourned at 10:15. Thanks.